Hi, everybody. We're going to give Elizabeth and also Anthony a little bit more time to join us. I know that they'll be on in just a moment. Hang tight at 6:30. We're going to start soon. Hi, Elizabeth. We're just waiting for Anthony. There he is.
While he signs on, would you like us to give the rules of the road for how our Zoom meetings work?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
Welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you're currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for the committee co-chairs, Anthony, Sharon, Elizabeth, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. Following the presentations, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or the thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you are on the phone, it is *9, *+9 to raise hand, and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see your chats. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to participant section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
I think Anthony needs to be unmuted.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Did we do our welcome? I'm sorry, I'm late. Did we do our welcome?
Yeah, no worries at all. No, we did not. I wanted to wait for you.
So, welcome everyone. I'm Anthony Cohn, one of the co-chairs of the Zoning and Development Committee. Welcome to our May meeting. And we have an interesting agenda today. But before we start, we've been having a series of meetings of a task force. As a cat jumps into the screen, a meeting of the task force for the MSK Pavilion, and we have, I think, 2 more. The next one is focused on construction, and the last will be a kind of summation. And as many of you as are interested, please attend. We're going to be forming a resolution, I think, at the end of the last meeting, and so it would be useful to get as much opinion as possible before we do. The first item on our agenda is the, we'll call it the 1538 Second Avenue. This is a kind of complicated is the wrong word. It's really sort of simple, but kind of complicated or administratively issue that has to do with the change of use application that will be coming before us next month as part of the as a land use committee meeting. And I think everyone thought that this was a good opportunity for the public and for committee members to actually ask some questions in a slightly less carnival atmosphere than a full board meeting. And so we have representatives from the applicant, Eric Palatnik, who is their attorney, I presume, and also we have Deepa Jain, a representative. So this is the Manhattan Schoolhouse application, and I guess I turn it over to Eric and Deepa to make the presentation.
Thank you. My name is Eric Palatnik, and if I may share the screen, is that acceptable to you?
Please.
Yeah.
Great. So just bear with me for a second while I pull it up, and you should all be able to see it now. And if I could just make it bigger, which I should be able to do here with one of these buttons. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. All right, make it a little bit bigger. All right, so you can all see my screen, I think, because I could see it. So my name is Eric Palatnik. I'm an attorney. Don't hold it against me. I am representing the Manhattan Schoolhouse, which I'm thrilled to be here for. It's really a great organization. And Deepti is on the phone with us, and she is the principal of Manhattan Schoolhouse. And she's here to answer any questions. They have 3 locations in New York already in Manhattan. They have one at 507 West 28th. They have one at the 1600 block of First Avenue and one in the 1400 block of First Avenue. They have been at it for years, and they pride themselves on a very high level of pre-K, universal pre-K, and infant and toddler daycare. Why are we here in front of you? It would seem like this is almost a shoo-in. We're here for a property at 1538 2nd Avenue, shown on your screen. I'm sure you're all familiar with the building. It's called Beckford Tower. And the ground floor, if you've walked past it, you've seen the frosted windows. You may have seen Manhattan Schoolhouse on out front. Manhattan Schoolhouse is not allowed to occupy the entire space. There's an obscure law in New York City zoning that states that in high density commercial corridors, such as the Upper East Side of Manhattan, that you cannot have a community facility use. It must be retail. At least 50% of the space must be retail. And you could ask city planning for a certification application to waive out of that requirement. Now, the law was created at the tail end of the 70s, and we can imagine we've all been around New York City for a very long time, and it seems like we're kind of on the cusp of it now, maybe a little bit. But there was a series of vacancies in storefronts in New York City, and there was a promulgation of retail uses. Obviously, now we're in a much different day and age, and we have spent a lot of time marketing the property, and I could show you here, prior to coming to you. And I'm going to go through the whole presentation in a second, but before I do, I'll explain this to you. What this document is explaining to you is that since as early as 2019, they have been marketing the property for all sorts of permitted uses, and they weren't able to find anybody. Obviously, COVID in the middle of it, medical they looked for restaurants and hospitality groups. The big problem with restaurants is that it's a very large space, and it requires vents for the venting of fumes and things like that. It was very difficult. And you can see here they looked for grocery stores, pharmacy, dry cleaners, and clothing stores. So they searched for a litany of permitted uses, And unfortunately, they weren't able to find any. They came across Deepti, and she was very interested in the property. And she signed a lease with them, and she committed to the space about a year ago. She has a waiting list of about 400 students, if you could believe that. She's filled to capacity already, and she hasn't even opened, and she has a waiting list. She services all different age groups from toddlers through pre-K. She has a universal pre-K program within the building, within the space. That universal pre-K is what is hinging, the opening of the universal pre-K is hinging upon this to be approved. So the uses that she has within the space right now are occupying less than half of the space, like I mentioned a moment ago. And as soon as she gets this approval, which we hope is going to come over the summer, DOE has given her the authorization to have a universal pre-K. I'll go through the site a little bit with you just so you could see it. I think you're all intimately familiar with it, so I'm not going to spend that much time other than coming down onto the ground a little bit here for you. This slide is here to show you surrounding retail uses. Part of the findings that we're required to make as a part of our certification application that we're here for is to show you that the use of the space as a community facility, a daycare, a pre-K, universal pre-K, that use is not pushing out or eliminating any other retail opportunities that would deprive area residents of local retail. When I read that finding, I have to be honest, as a lifetime New Yorker, I couldn't believe I was even reading it, because the Upper East Side is, of course, synonymous with local retail. It's probably got the best local retail in the entire city. But having said that, the law is in place, so we must meet that requirement. And you can see there's plenty of retail around us here. And that law, I think, was created at a time when school seat shortages probably were not in such great demand as they are now. This map that I'm about to click on shows you the zoning district of the property. It's in what's called the C19 district. It's adjacent to an R10. You all know this is a very high density neighborhood. The property right here, you could see what Deepti has done already. This is the space at issue from looking at it from 2nd Avenue. You could see the frosted windows, and those were designed specifically to prevent people from looking in at any young children. I'll skip through a couple of pictures here. You all know the neighborhood better than I do, so I'm not going to spend too much time showing you pictures of the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but I will click to the site plan. So this is a site plan and really a first floor plan for you. It's more of a site plan too, because it shows you the streets around it. Everything outlined in red is the building. But that's not all being occupied by Deepti. What's being occupied by Deepti on the first floor is shown right here. And this shows you on the left side, everything in blue is what will be occupied by her. And you can see it extends around the entire around the entire perimeter. And what it's got, you have infant care, you have 4 rooms, you have toddlers, you have 3 rooms, you have 2-year-olds that have 3 rooms, and you have 3-year-olds that have 3 rooms, and then you have universal pre-K. All the younger children that can't walk, things like that, obviously because they're younger, they're of age where they haven't even learned to walk yet, the infants and the 2s. As you can see, the toddlers, they're all up on the first floor. There's also a cellar level. There are 2 means of egress within the space. There's egress right here, where I'm moving the cursor around. There's an egress at the bottom of the screen, right here. And I'm going to take you now to the cellar level, which is should be right next to it. There we go. And this shows you the cellar level. The right side of the page is the cellar level. So you walk down the staircase, and this is the amount of space they have. The cellar is about 2,000 square feet. The first floor is about a little over 8,000 square feet. This is what the space has been designed to look like, and this is everything you've just seen. So this is what would be allowed to be there. You could have another fashionable boutique, or you could have an educational facility. We're hoping you would support the educational facility. We've introduced the development to the council member. She has not taken an opinion yesterday, but we have introduced it to her, and she is familiar with it. And this is what's in place in their other locations. This is what they do. This is what your windows start to look like, and I think it's a beautiful thing. It's nice to see families, after reading everything for so many years now about people leaving New York. It's nice to see something dedicated to keeping people in New York. So that is our application. It's in its entirety. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Like I said, it's what's called a certification. It doesn't really require a formal vote by you. It is not ULURP. It's not Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. It's been referred to you at the request of city planning, and they would like to hear your thoughts on it. But you are not in a ULURP, a formal ULURP matter. It's a certification. So I hope I was clear in everything I've tried to communicate. And if there are any questions, we're here to answer your questions for you.
Terrific. Thank you, Eric. I think I've got a couple of committee members queued up, of course, but maybe I'm going to just ask, we can start with Elaine. So if you would unmute Elaine, or allow her to unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Anthony. I have a number of questions and concerns. First, this school has been operating now almost since the building opened without any kind of acknowledgement to the community board. So I'm concerned about that. And I wonder, were you also located on 2nd Avenue between 78th and 79th Street? That's my first question.
Go on,
Go ahead. What?
Well, I'll have Deepti tell me if she's located at that address. With respect to the opening, of course, we can understand your concern. Great pains were taken to respect the rules and not open up more than 50% of the space that's fronting the street, which is in accordance with the rules, while still meeting the demands, the pressing demands of the community. And that's why it was opened. It is not, if you go in this space now and you walk in, you will see that there are half of the front rooms are vacant and not occupied. And that's been held in abeyance until such time that we come before your board. The business need to open and a demand.
Let me give a little background. The building was constructed. They understood the requirement of retail space on the ground floor. They have a sister or brother building 1 block south. That was arranged so retail was equipped to open a restaurant. If we go back to the space that you're asking about, my concerns are retail space was established and necessary to allow for light and pedestrian safety, as well as the opportunity for businesses to meet the needs in a contextual way of its residents. You've identified your space, saying there's a need for this pre-K toddler. One, I want to know, is it for-profit or nonprofit? On your universal pre-K, is that open to all youngsters without a fee if paid by DOE? The other issues I have is that to have a toddler program in the basement, what are the DOB and health regulations there? Because my understanding is that that might not be acceptable. I'm also concerned really that you're not the first let me take it back. You're not the first group that's come in wanting to use retail space. We've seen this in other locations, whether it's the 92nd Street Y on 3rd Avenue between 87th or 88th and some other facilities. But I'd like you to explain who you really are. Are you a nonprofit or for-profit? And why? Now you're telling me, well, they could not rent out. We don't have the data on that. When the building was built, and I lived through the building being built, what was done ahead of time to enable businesses to open? 2nd Avenue is having more and more stores opened. It's not that there's a vacuum here. So if you could go back to all the questions I have, because I am not, and I'm concerned about a community facility such as a school, of which I need to know more, opening on ground level in a residential building. Based on what you said was there was no other applicants available to use the space. Thank you.
Sure. Would you like me to address some of the questions, Eric?
Deepti, please, and then I'll answer whatever you miss.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Deepti Jain. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Elaine, I tried to take good notes when you were speaking, but if I missed anything, certainly please let me know.
Okay.
So some of the just the more straightforward ones. So in the cellar area, to your concern, I just want to be clear, we have the oldest children, toddlers, you're right, would never be in the cellar. Infants and toddlers, you're absolutely right, can never be in the cellar. The cellar has the oldest children over 4-year-olds. That's what's in the cellar. It's not the toddler. So just wanted to clarify that. We are a for-profit organization, which is owned by 2 women, and most of our staff is persons of color and women-owned, mostly women staff. We are childcare is not known to be a very, it's not investment banking. It's, we make nominal profits to serve the community. But my partner and I, Kamala Faruqi, started this business 10 years ago to serve the families of New York because we have a passion for this age group. This is our 5th location in New York City. 3 of the locations are on First Avenue. There's one on 84th Street, 85th Street, and 74th Street. And there's one in Chelsea, as Eric mentioned. And this is our 5th site, which is on 2nd Avenue. We were one of the first childcare centers, a private one on the Upper East Side, to embrace, I would use the word, the DOE program. It started with 4K for all, and now it's 3K for all. We were one of the first private programs to really embrace it to the point that you're making, to create an inclusive environment for the families and the children we serve. So the DOE, we contract with the DOE across all of our sites. It's an inclusive program. It's open, and it's open to everybody in the community. And that's who we are. And this is why we have a passion for this program. I did want to also mention we signed the lease with the landlord back in March 2021. And so I know you just mentioned, it wasn't a question, but you said that, we've been there since the beginning. So we signed with them in 2021. We first met them, I think, in 2020, late 2020, and it went through a lot of discussion back and forth before we decided to take this space. And one of the reasons we made a huge investment in this space, to Eric's point, to support the families, because there is huge demand. There are 400 families on the wait list who need childcare, working families who need childcare in this area. And that's why we decided to expand on the Upper East Side, and this being our, our 5th location, like I said. Did I get all your points, Elaine? Did I miss something?
When you talk about the pre-K, I assume that's government funding.
Yes. And 3K as well. So it started with pre-K, and now the government has also started 3K. So we are a provider that provides both 3K for all and 4K for all. Yeah.
And is your waiting list for the pre-K, pre-3 and 4s? Or
3
is
and
it
4s. 3 and 4s.
And since you're for profit, what is your capacity in the non-pre-K 3 and 4s? And what are you charging?
So we don't do any non-pre-K 3s and 4s. We only run the DOE program for our 3s and 4s.
Okay. But for your toddlers that are not pre-Ks, 3s and 4s, it's a private operation. And what are you charging for those toddlers or infants?
It's $29.50 per month per child.
$950 per child, no matter what the age below the pre-K. in four.
That is correct. And we do, so that is correct. That's our infant toddler program. And across all of our sites, pretty much it's the same pricing. I will note, compared to other providers and private providers, I would say in the area, we are on the lower side because we want to make this as inclusive and as available to families as possible. So compared to other private preschools in the area, similar to ours, that run sort of one of the programs we run, which is highly regarded, is the Reggio Emilia program that was inspired from Italy. It's very, very highly regarded in New York City. A lot of demand for it. Parents who understand the space, you know, they've heard of Montessori, Waldorf, and we follow the Reggio philosophy. So there's a lot of demand for that philosophy as well. But we are one of the lower price providers, and we want it to be that way because we want to be on the lower side as much as possible to support the staff and support labor. As you can imagine, labor and rent is some of our biggest expenses.
Okay, my final question. This is retail space, and I'm going to put a bias. I don't like that children go to school. Now, granted, a little infant won't know this, to go to school in an apartment building or a commercial building. But knowing what the regulations were for this site, why did you engage in trying to rent it, given the limitations?
So it's a great question because I had a lot of heartburn over this, to be completely honest with you. And just to be clear with what Eric was describing, this entire space, when we rented it, it was marketed as a 13,000 square foot space. So there's 2 levels, as I described. The issue that we're talking about here impacts a very small portion of the frontage of the space, about 1,500 square feet, about 50%. And if I'm not a technical person, Eric, if I'm misspeaking anything, correct me. It's about 50% of the frontage. So it didn't impact the entire space. And because this is where we have the demand, this is where it's called a desert, actually, a childcare desert by a lot of city designations. We felt comfortable investing, and I have faith in this board. And I have faith in all the city council. Julie Menon's office has worked very closely with us. They're very, very supportive. In fact, we did reach out to Julie's office before we signed this lease to make sure that we would have their support. And we did enough diligence as we could to ensure that we would have the support ultimately because of the dire need for families in the area. And as somewhat was Eric described, most because of e-commerce and so many shifting landscape environments as have happened, retail in itself is becoming challenging. And this landlord had been trying from 2019. I mean, that's all they made tremendous effort to try to meet this need. But I guess I was very, very hopeful and optimistic in the city of New York and the regulators of New York that people would ultimately support families and children and a women-owned business. So that's why we did it with that hope. And we did check in with Julie's office. So
I understand all that, but I walk by that building every day almost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the frosted windows because in retail space, it's supposed to be open to the public. I understand your need for privacy, but there's been nothing done to in some way lighten up that particular area where you're located.
If I may disagree with you there just a little bit. One of the things that I was, when we started this process, we were told, if you look at our other schools, our windows are pretty much fully covered. In this space, we were told that they can no more be 50% covered. So what we try to do, and we have a lot of parents who want full privacy. So if you look at the frosting, we pick something very elegant, very simple, but it only covers a very small portion of the windows. We wanted to leave, to your point on the light, we wanted to leave as much of the window as possible so that the light and the sunshine comes in for the children, comes in for the space. We did that very, very thoughtfully to ensure that we don't just cover up the whole space. Only a very small section of the windows are covered, the absolute minimum that we could do so that the children have privacy and the parents are comfortable. So I just wanted to, we put a lot of thought into that. I just wanted to just clarify that.
Thank you, but I'll go back and look, but I don't think it's as you described. My concern is the lack of light that will come into the street, to the sidewalk. That's one of the reasons we have retail, to lighten up the sidewalks for safety. You have nothing. I don't know, can you put some lights out there that don't offend the apartment buildings across the street or above, the residents above? But you This facility negates any type of safety for those using the sidewalk. I hear the privacy. When I walked by, I knew what it was all about. My background can tell you that. But I am concerned that your presence there is a precedent for us losing in our community retail. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Let's see, next we have, no other members of the public. Okay, so Michelle, go ahead.
Thank you, Anthony. A couple of questions. Firstly, access. You have a bike lane coming down 2nd Avenue. Where is the pickup and drop off for these children? Whether parents come by foot or, as many do, they drop off by car in the morning or car service. Where are you planning? You have 2 places of egress. Where are you planning for your drop off to be?
So most of our parents drop off by foot, and they are, like I said, working families. And the 2 egresses we do have different age groups going to different, going to the different doors as well, so we can split it up. We also stagger the time so that there's not a lot of people there at the same time. So we work very thoughtfully with our staff to make, and the parents' needs. I mean, different parents have different needs for drop off and pickup. So we work with the parents very closely, and there's typically not, can't think of a lot of families that do cars. Most of them are just walking their children in, and we will use both of our entrances to try to make the flow as seamless as possible. And like I said, we stagger as well.
Are they both on 2nd Avenue?
They're both the egresses exactly are on 2nd Avenue, and they're pretty large, large exits, large doors. Yeah.
And you stagger the times from what time in the morning?
From 7:30 in the morning till parents drop off all the way till around 9:30, 10. Yeah.
And pick up?
Pickups generally starts around 4 to about 6, somewhere in that range. Yes.
Okay. The other thing is, I don't know if this building is a co-op or a rental, but have you reached out to the residents? How did they feel about having the school?
So that's a great question. So when there was discussion about having us in the space, the landlord did survey their building as well. Most people were very supportive and very excited about having a business like ours in the building. And they see it as an amenity, really, of support. So yes, all of that was done initially when they were considering us. They surveyed the entire building. I don't think it's co-ops, and Eric, you may know, I believe it's all privately owned.
Yeah,
right?
Well, that's a co-op or a condo.
The condo.
It's a condo, sorry. It's a condo, and I believe they're privately owned. I don't think there's a lot of rentals there. I don't know.
It was probably built as a condo. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Is there any outdoor space associated with the building that you'll be using?
So great question as well. Unfortunately, the building does not have a lot of outdoor space, but we were able to create a play space inside the area. And there are several parks close by that we can bring the children to. Yeah.
So you will have to transport them to the parks.
We do that naturally. We'd like to take them out for walks and stuff, but there is no outdoor space, but we do have an indoor playground. Yeah.
How long is your lease?
10 years.
And also, what are you planning about, 2 more questions. What's your plan for signage?
Signage in terms of—
I saw something in the visual, but how do you plan to identify the school? What is your signage?
So our name is Manhattan Schoolhouse, and that would be our signage. We don't do any more signage than that. We keep—
Yes, but how big and where and how often? Do you have a visual of that?
Yeah, so it's the sign is right above the door. There's a couple of places that the sign is there of Manhattan Schoolhouse.
Do you have a visual of that, Eric?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
While you're getting to that, I'll ask, let's see.
Oh, hold on.
So is that a retractable awning?
It's not.
Is the awning retractable? That I don't know the answer to that question. But hold on, let me get you the signage here. one of these pictures has the signage.
Yeah, I thought I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it earlier when I was showing the pictures, but now I don't see it.
It was in the beginning, I think.
Yeah, I think it was one of the early pictures, but we
Yes.
saw it fleetingly, so
Yes.
it's past the maps. Yeah, that, well, not really showing it so well.
Hold on, I'll keep going here. Give me 1 second.
Is the signage only on the awnings or is it on the building band? You have a band up there. Is it on the building band or on
On
the?
the band, it's on the band, as you said. There's 3 big windows and it's on top of that. So this is,
Here, this is, no, it's on the awning, actually.
That was
Uh,
another different
yeah.
location.
Oh, a different, oh, okay, that was
Yeah,
a different location.
It's
so
on
you know
the-
where you have the boutique, where the picture you showed of the boutique, where the boutique name was, it's right above that. I mean, we can follow up with an image of that if that's not a
So
problem.
where the boutique was, that was set in the band, so that's what you're planning, in the
Yes, that's
band.
what Manhattan Schoolhouse, that's what it's
And
gonna
will
say.
it be lit or no?
No lit. It's just a
Okay.
very subtle sign, and that we got it to prove. We had to work with the landlord as well with a sign that they were comfortable with. So they don't want
And the
it.
size of the lettering and all that?
Yeah, they signed off on all of that because they needed to make sure it's in sync with their branding.
Okay, last question. What will you do since you've signed a lease for the space? You have rented the space, and at the moment, because by law, you can't occupy all of it. What will you do if you don't get the changes that you want? And you can only use the space which you are utilizing now. What will you do if that's the scenario?
Honestly, go ahead.
I first, after she's done crying and
Yeah, I would cry.
because she's invested, she's taken a big risk with this location.
I understand, but it was
Exactly.
prior to, it was
Understood.
prior to getting approval. So I'm asking, what's the plan?
Yes, go
The,
ahead.
the would be that she gets it. If she doesn't get it, she can't offer the universal pre-K, and it would just be a daycare location in this portion that she has, and she would have to relinquish the portion that she doesn't control right now. But we would hope it would not come to that.
So in other words, if she doesn't get it, then she'll have private daycare for newborns or, infants and toddlers, and she will not be able to offer pre-K. And that would mean that she can't use the basement because only the older children can be in the basement.
That's
Well,
right. It would
yes.
disrupt the whole flow of
So
the-
how many square footage would you have to end up with by law if this does not get approval?
We'd lose about 3,000 square feet if it was to be not approved.
Out of,
A total of it's a little over 10,000 right now. So we'd be at about 7,000 square feet.
and how much of that is basement?
2,000 square feet, which we're allowed.
Do you have-
We'd be allowed to continue to utilize the basement.
If
But
you
it's-
had the older children, but you're
Yeah.
saying that if you didn't get approval, you wouldn't have the older children.
Well, it would just take, she'd have to reshuffle her programming is what she would have to do. So right now, the space has been designed around that space to be almost fully occupied around the space at issue that we're talking about, the space that's at risk. So she'd have to reprogram the space, and whether or not it would include the universal pre-K or who else would come out, I think we'd have to analyze it a little
Yeah,
bit.
we'd
But
have to redo the whole space. It would
Lose
be a
pro-
mess. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You would conceivably end up with private 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and not the universal
Oh,
DOA.
for the short term, for sure.
Yeah.
But term, we'd have to reprogram.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We now have Rita.
I am a former school teacher, and a grandmother, and I am not a former grandmother, I still am. That I am very much in favor of this program. Unfortunately, not everybody can afford it, and people who need to afford it. Do you offer any scholarships?
Yes, we do. And why don't you tell her what you have going on with respect to monies so that they understand?
So the DOE program, the 3K, 4K is funded by the DOE. So that's a huge break for parents who come and work with us because they know that as a part of our program, as the children age, they can go to the 3K, 4K. Also, we access other local folks from the community to just go to 3K, 4K. That happens a lot too. People keep their children at home and then they just send them to the higher age groups. So, and DOE is inclusive for all. It's all children are welcome regardless of their income levels.
I must admit, I didn't write down the numbers. If you are operating at total capacity from newborn to pre-K, how many children will be in this facility?
About 180.
And how many teachers will be there?
It's a great question. So teachers, about 30, staff of 35. This site will enable us to hire a staff of about 35 teachers. And like I said, the most of our staff is women and persons of color.
Will you be using any school children, older school children, for community credit to be taking care of any children after school?
So we do have internship programs that we offer to high schoolers in the area. People who come, people can come and apply for high schools, like in the summer program. We offer a lot of programs like that. So I don't know if that's what you mean, or is there something else that you meant?
Oh, that's okay.
Yes, so that we do offer summer internship for students. And actually we have a program with Hunter as well. A lot of students from Hunter come and work with us because a lot of our sites are within walking distance of Hunter. That's actually, I'm going to Hunter for my master's in early childhood education, so that we have a connection with the Hunter system as well. And thank you for appreciating, children. Thank you, we appreciate that.
What I appreciate is, and I know that there are a lot of eyes watching as you are taking care of children, and that to me is very important. I wish you luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Sharon is next. Sharon Pope-Marshall.
Thanks, Anthony. Eric, I'd like to know whether or not the lower space is technically classified as a cellar or as a basement. I think it's important to make sure that we're referring to the lower level correctly, because there's a technical difference between those two terms. So I wanted to know what the official classification is.
It is a cellar. More than half of it is below grade, so it qualifies as a cellar.
Okay, all right. And Deputy, I wanted to follow up Elaine's question, and it was not fully answered, I think. First of all, I want to thank you so much for really thoughtfully, as you mentioned, of the way that you frosted the windows. But I think that Elaine, and she also appreciated that, but she wanted to know, I think as well, whether or not there was anything else that could be done with respect to the lighting. I'm thinking that perhaps you close after 6 p.m., maybe 6 or 7 p.m. By that measure, several months it'll be dark by that time. So, is there anything else you could do with the lighting, say, up until 9 o'clock or so, that would provide some additional illumination at the street level?
Sure,
I-
Sharon, great question. Eric, actually, I can answer, then I'll let you let you speak. This is my first time. I don't know if I'm doing something out of turn or not, but we have
It's
our
fine.
cleaning staff.
No,
that-
you're doing great, Deputy.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, so. Okay, we have our cleaning staff that comes every evening. So the site closes around 6, between 7 to 10. If you ever walk by Second Avenue, you'll see the lights are wide open and almost there, even there sometimes later till 11 o'clock. So the lights are on till about 11 o'clock almost every night when our cleaning staff is there. So that light illumination is there. And I do want to emphasize how we did the windows. The windows are very, very large. And we literally did, some of the windows only have about 2 feet of frosting. And we picked a very elegant frosting that the landlord also had to sign off on that to leave as much of the window open as possible, because we agree with what Elaine said, that we want light, we want as much openness as possible. So we were very, very thoughtful, tried to be with that concern, but illumination, I'm glad you asked that question, because cleaning staff is there. They only come at night once all the children are gone, and it takes them a few hours to clean the space. Eric, so go ahead, sorry.
That's what I was going to say, the same thing, that you're open till 8 doing maintenance on the site. So there's a lot of activity, and to the points of trying to keep the site active and keep a streetscape. There is actually more activity probably going on around her site than there would be around, say, a more of a quiet retail kind of use, like a high-end luxury store of some sort, or a high-end retailer. So she will have definitely be accommodating to your concerns. And if she'll be there, she's here for the long haul. So if things are not working out, you can see her outgoing nature. She has a wonderful relationship with the landlord, and she'll be able to accommodate any of your concerns. The windows you're all talking about, those were very big concern for her. I mean, you're all talking about it. I cannot tell you how much thought she really put into that, because she was trying to keep it lively and keep some vision to the street, but at the same time respecting the privacy of the children. So drapes or something like that wasn't what she was after, or the fully closed off window. So we're trying to find a middle ground.
Okay, thank you. My last question. So I want to understand a little bit more fully about your plan B, and hopefully it doesn't get to that point, Deputy. But I was wondering, why is it that the universal pre-K segment of your programming would have to be removed?
It wouldn't. That was my misspeaking. In the short term, because the way she set it up right now is based upon the pre-K starting in the fall. She didn't leave any space. If that space didn't make it, she's already programmed the remaining space. So in the short term, there would be no universal pre-K, but she would quickly hustle to figure out how to modify the remainder of the programming so that she could make space so that the universal pre-K could be accommodated, and then she could have the smaller children there as well. But right now, as we've said at the beginning, there is no pre-K within the building. So if we didn't get it in a month, then she would have to figure that out at that point.
Okay, I see where we're going with that. Now, for those students whose parents are paying the full price, other than universal pre-K, are there scholarships for them?
So we offer scholarships really for our staff. So we offer, our employees, if they want to bring children in, we offer those to our staff. And because we are full across all of our sites, we don't have a formal scholarship program outside of the DOE, which is inclusive, but we do offer for our staff to bring in their children. We'll work it out with them from a comp perspective, because as you can imagine, teachers, unfortunately in our society, I think they should be paid the most, they're paid the least. So we are very, very accommodating to our staff, and we making sure that if they want to bring their children in, we accommodate that, so.
Okay, well, a happy staff means happy kids.
That's right. Happy parents.
Yeah.
Happy parents, yes.
Happy parents, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for me, Anthony.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sharon. Next is Marco and then Peggy.
Thank you, Anthony. Nice cut. Well, I have a big dilemma right here. On the one hand, we have a community need. And that made me think a lot. And that made me be very careful in my point of view right here. On the other hand, the developer is not a good neighbor. It has been proven that to be a very bad neighbor. Oh, let me tell you one thing. First of all, let's go start for the developer. He demolished 52, let me see exactly, I got to give you the precise number, 52 affordable units to build this tower. And he transferred the air rights of the whole block, except one property, the small property over there. Then he works on during the construction on Saturday, destroying the peace and tranquility of the neighbors. And when he showed up for our community, we said, what we can do for our community? He said nothing, because everything is as a right of development. So that made me feel uncomfortable when a developer will have something like that. Then I read your paper. They said that they has been looking for a restaurant, and the problem was the mechanical ducts. Yeah, but this is a brand new building that he knew that this can happen, this kind of situation. The building was approved in 2017. And the last action is still without no CO. Probably they have maybe a temporary TCO. And 11/3/2021. So basically, if he has been marketing, he is still not losing anything at all, because doesn't have no CO. Is unfinished the building in the according with the documents of the CO of the paperwork in DOB. So the other situation is, you said that you want to put 180 children. The CEO said clearly, and the seller is 62. This is for daycare, 62, and for the daycare, 81. Combined is 143. You right now, you want to go beyond of that. 40 children more than legally is allowable. And the Schedule A in the Department of Building show that. So another thing that made me feel completely uncomfortable is, yes, I would like to support this facility, but to provide just only benefits for your staff, which is basically that you run around their income or their paycheck. My concern is, why don't have for the other children in the community, and you don't offer that, and you have several places. And I think I have a mixed use in this situation. Yes, we need that your service, definitely. But on the other hand, we don't see anything that the developer is willing to do that. Anything and everything go against the developer, because the developer has been impacting negatively in our community. And this is what they have, this regulation. These regulations are not obscure. The regulation is exactly to give a good standard of living on the Upper East Side.
So Marco, I can comment on the inclusivity, the DOE program. Like I said, we were one of the first private programs on the Upper East Side to embrace the DOE program, which is, for all. In terms of the 182 children, that is what is allowed based on the 2 levels, and we can follow up with the specificity there if you need. But 182 children are actually allowed between the 2 levels: infant, toddlers, 2s and 3s on the first floor, and about 40 children on it's actually 40 in the cellar area.
I'm reading from the CEO. I'm reading from the legal law document.
So
I'm not creating myself the numbers.
Yeah,
No,
I agree.
Clarify for you, Deepti. That's because the filing doesn't represent the portion that we're here about. It omitted those 3 rooms at the front. So
could be because of that, but we will, it is meant for, the space is designed for 180 children. I can assure you, we would not operate without the proper permits and the license to make sure the right amount of children are there in a space that are allowed, safety first always. So that would never happen, not with us.
So you don't modify the CO because right now you easily to modify the Schedule A. That's what you have right now in the CO.
If I can clarify,
Sure.
they don't have the certification yet that we're talking about, that we're here for. So because of that, the architect, when he filed, could not include 3 of the rooms on the first floor that we spoke about before that take up about 3,000 square feet. He could not include those within the filing. So the number that you're seeing for the occupancy count doesn't include that square footage. If we get the certification approved, he'll be amending it to include it, and the occupancy count will be updated to reflect the proposed occupancy. The occupancy that you're reading right now is the current existing occupancy. So that's why it's not matching what we're proposing. I hope that.
How do you propose something that is not reviewed by DOB? Because DOB, if they consider that that's the number, because you know that the issue is very simple. Yes, you have two means of egress from the cellar and 2 means of egress on the first floor. That's fine. But the point is, the more people that you increase, the more means of egress is required. It's not only one room, it's more and more means of egress, and the less space you cut it. So that is what has to be according with whatever DOB said, because I'm not going to start designing anything at all. Is the decision of DOB to review these numbers.
The occupancy, the way it is right now, has been reviewed by the Department of Buildings. They're the ones that approve the numbers, and it's been designed to be compliant when we go back with the additional space. It's been designed to be compliant with the DOB and the FDNY regulations for egress, and it'll comply with it when we up the numbers. So it's compliant right now, and it will be compliant if we get the approval.
But no action has been filed. No action has been filed since 11/3/2021.
No, there's filings on file.
I'm reviewing the information on the DOB right now. I'm going parallel with that one.
Marco, I think we're getting a little bit of far afield from what we came to discuss. I think it's an interesting point and an appropriate one. I think at a glance, there is not a particular problem with egress, especially considering that the vast majority of the students will be the children will be on the upper floor. And it seems to me that the 2 means of egress from the lower floor can more than handle the number of people that would be in there. This is without measuring it or checking it. But I think, yes, you are correct. The Department of Buildings has to rule on it before they can use the entire space. But since they are permitted for the smaller space, if they get permission to use it via the zoning special permit or mother may I from city planning, then they have to go back to the Department of Buildings, obviously.
That's right.
And I think that, so I think that's sort of at this point, while interesting, beyond the scope of what we are talking about tonight, which is really a use change from retail to community facility.
Mm-hmm.
You're right,
And
Anthony.
the appropriateness of that.
This is the change. The changes according with the numbers, and the numbers they claim to DOB has been approved, and that's what I explained to them, that no action has been issued since 2021. So that is my point, and I don't try to rule anything the legality of the means of egress. This is exactly we need DOB an input of DOB. Whatever DOB said, we have to obey whatever they said. But that's the point right here, and that's my point with them. That I don't see that they are claiming something that is not so far is not allowable. Thank you.
Right, and I just want to make a quick comment on the developer piece. And Eric, I don't have any of this history. Like I said, this is my first time at this meeting, so we would hate to get penalized over any issues there. Marco, I just wanted to just make that point. If there's issues with the developer, I mean, we are renting the site from them, so we just don't want to be penalized for anything. There are concerns that may be there for the developer. Eric, anything you want to add to that?
No, I was going to make the same point that you are not the developer, and we can understand everybody's concerns during construction, but hopefully they keep you separate from him.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. And I think we will be able to separate you from the developer who was, in fact, not very community friendly, to put it mildly. Okay, Peggy.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much for being with us tonight. I just have two quick questions I wanted to ask. You had mentioned that you had talked to the residents in the building about this projected use of the cellar and ground floor. Now, since there'll be ideally 180 children, presumably making a lot of noise, what did you tell the building that you would do about this noise issue?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So just to be clear, I did not personally go out and survey the residents. The landlord did before we rented the space. And there's a lot of provisions in the lease and the way we constructed the space. This is our 5th location in New York City. We've never had an issue with any landlord with the noise of the children, and we don't expect to have any issues here as well. The site is very, very well insulated. So we've never had run into that issue, and we don't expect to have that issue. There was no specific resident that reached out to us and asked us that specific question, but the landlord grilled us pretty hard on that, and that is well protected in the lease. And we've never had an issue in our pipelines. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, since you will be using space in a traditionally non-designated way, i.e. it's not going to be retail, is there any kind of accommodation or benefit in exchange for getting this that you could provide the residents of the building and or the community at large? And let me just say, I say this because anytime I feel strongly that when an organization or developer is getting some kind of variance or benefit, that they ought to do something for the community in exchange for that. Is there anything that you have in mind that you could do for the residents and or the community? Lighting has been one suggestion that's come up, but can you do something for that on that issue, or some other benefit you could provide the community?
Well,
Right.
there's not.
First of all, we are not the developer. We're not the developer. The second thing I would say is for the residents of the building, we have talked to the landlord about, we have a long wait list for children that are in the building. If they would like to work with us to prioritize those children, there are those types of conversations we would, we have offered to the landlord to offer to their residents to support that. But like I said, we were literally one of the first private childcare centers on the Upper East Side to offer the DOE program, which is, there is really, I don't know what more you could do from a children's perspective than to offer that. And we are offering that across all of our sites. Go ahead, Eric, sorry.
No, I was going to say a similar thing. And plus the universal pre-K that's being provided is really an invaluable service. I mean, it's being provided by the government, but by the same token, she is acting as a conduit of that service. Which is a very low cost and free service that's being provided to many young people in the neighborhood. So we would hope you would see that as a tangible benefit. Other than that, she's
I'm sorry. This is a zoning meeting. So I'm wondering, as a compensation for a use that's not prescribed here, if there could be something, a give back you could give to the community.
No, there's really nothing. Unfortunately, this is not. I'll be back in front of you with larger developments that are that are creating hundreds of units of housing, and there's a lot. But I mean, she's got 3 mortgages. She's scrimping and saving here to create a business enterprise, and it's a small. At its heart, it's a very small business. It's
is.
not
And creating
yeah.
jobs. I mean, I think that's a huge support to the community.
So we're not trying to sound as if we don't want to give anything. She will give back. She'll be one of the most giving businesses you have in the community. When people knock on her door to get involved in community events, I can guarantee you that she's going to be the first one to answer. Sponsorships, little leagues, fundraisers,
we
things
do
like
internships, with children,
fabric of a community. She's not here selling legal cannabis or drugs in a drugstore or shoes to people who need high-end shoes. She is the community, and she wants to be deeply involved in it. So I can guarantee you, Peggy, although she can't offer you wads of cash right now, she can guarantee you that her soul will be deeply committed to you and the community. And you will see that if you even go by there tomorrow, knock on the door and talk to her and her staff, you'll see the commitment they have. I think you'll be thrilled to have them there. More thrilled than any Dwayne Reed would ever do. I can tell you, she's a super person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Next, we have Valerie and then Craig.
Thanks, Anthony. I have maybe some of my questions are a little bit simple, so please bear with me for a second. I'm trying to understand, you're asking us for this variance as the lessee of the property and not the owner of the property. So can you explain, I mean, we're not really giving the variance to the school, we're giving the variance to the developer. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's not a variance. It's called a certification, which is a much less condition than a variance. A certification.
Right. I get that. I appreciate the clarification. I'm not a land use lawyer. I only play one at the community board. But what I'm trying to figure out is, and I think maybe this is where some of my fellow community board members were going, while we appreciate, and I see those kids every morning, they're adorable outside the school on 80th Street. Why are, and we, very much appreciate the things that are being done there. Why isn't the developer here asking for this?
Because it's not the developer's responsibility to do so. It's the tenant's responsibility. So, for example, when you've probably seen sidewalk cafe applications. It's the tenant that makes the application. It's not.
I don't know. I mean, I see that a little bit differently because that's related to the business. The developer filed the.
No, yeah, but just hang on a second, Valerie, because I think it's a great question, and I'm sorry to interrupt. But,
no, it's fine.
But Eric, the certification is for this tenant and not for subsequent tenants, correct or incorrect?
Incorrect. The certification is for the use of the space as
is that forever or just for this tenant?
It's specific to this space, and it runs forever with the space. There's no term on it.
Okay.
So then I think Valerie makes a very strong point.
So we do have a 10-year lease, as I mentioned earlier, and please God, we'll stay in business way longer than that, and hoping that this will go, way longer than that. So I don't know.
That's absolutely true. But one of the things that I promise I'll let you talk some more, Valerie. Okay. One of the things that concerns us or concerns some of us, many of us, whatever, is not that has nothing to do with you or what you are doing in the space, but what will happen to the space in 10 years or even 20 years when you are no longer there and the landlord can do something else that is maybe not so agreeable to all of us, if that's another way of saying. But
Got
anyway, that was all. Valerie, I'm sorry.
I mean,
No,
I'm fine if you just want to approve it from us.
I don't think we have that option. I mean, that I think is the issue. We can't just say, as long as you're the tenant, that we are agreeing to this. Am I wrong about that?
Well, you can you could put conditions in your recommendation for the city planning, and city planning could take it upon advisement.
Like just for childcare, for example, right? I mean, you could do that. Not necessarily could be another provider. I mean, that's always going to be a need. Hopefully, New York will always have a need for childcare. So
No, I mean, that, and then just related to that, I mean, the children are there now. So are you saying that you need the community facility use only because you're exceeding what would be you wouldn't have to get a certification for?
Correct. They're only allowed to use half of the storefront, half of the space, the frontage
Okay.
for daycare. So that's
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I just go back to my original point, that is, while I think this is a great use for this time and for this tenant, and as I said, I think I see the kids, they look very happy. I wonder if we're really, if we can do this in a more limited way, because I'm not sure that I do remember having to make multiple phone calls during that construction, and how this particular developer was really not a good neighbor and could have cared less. And I'm not sure that we want to give that type of person a benefit in perpetuity, as opposed to something that just runs with this lease. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Valerie. That was an excellent point. And maybe before this actually comes before us, in that larger forum, we can get some clarification as to whether or not we are in fact allowed to, or not so much, not so much that we are not allowed to, that we're not allowed to limit it, but that in fact that city planning can say, no, this is only for this particular additional use. But I mean, I think that's something that we can try and find out between now and the land use meeting in next month. Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you to Manhattan Schoolhouse for your presentation. Just building off of this last question, I'm a little bit confused, and I apologize because part of it may be because I joined a few minutes late. But what exactly is the certification for in terms of this waiver? Is it to make, and what would it be for? Would it be to allow it to be a use group 3, or would it be for something more general than that, or more specific?
it would be for use group 3, like you just said. And what it says specifically is that it doesn't say that what uses they'll allow. It says that the requirements of commercial uses shall be waived. So it's an affirmative requirement to have use group 6, but the certification does not state what uses it will allow. So it's giving the commission the discretion to allow those other uses. Our paperwork calls out a use group 3 community facility educational use. So that's how the law is written, and that's how we've replied.
Okay, so at the end of the day, in 10 years, it could be used for any purpose, and theoretically.
Theoretically, but I think we could reach out to city planning because, like we were talking about, because the certification is going to have a specific language and it's right up, and there could be a note that go onto the CFO.
Okay, I think that's just a really critical point. I would hope that for the land use meeting next month that you can try to make some inroads on that and give us assurances, because beyond that, to me, at the end of the day, whatever happened in the past with the developers in the past, and it's a question of whether we are supportive of this proposed use, at least for now, knowing this. So at least to me, considering the benefits and contrasting them with some of the types of retail outlets that tend to take up spaces in our community that we really don't need, whether it be chain stores that are a dime a dozen, banks, illegal dispensaries. I think we should be welcoming a facility that's addressing such a critical issue, such as providing pre-K seats. But that being said, also, I think I have a little bit of discomfort, and I know this has been alluded to before, with the fact that, at least for those that seek daycare, this isn't particularly an option for our community members that don't have large wallets. So I didn't know if there was any consideration for perhaps setting aside some portion of the daycare facility, or the number of children that are in it, for those that struggle to avoid daycare, and perhaps provide discounted rates based off of financial needs.
So 3K, 4K is free to the
Understood. That's why I said the daycare portion, not the pre-K portion.
Mhm.
So
So-
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I think we've discussed this, and I think it's a good point.
All right, that's
Thank
it for me. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Craig. Let's see, before I come back to Michelle, and I promise I will, Barbara Rudder is now unmuted.
Right, thanks. I'm sorry if I don't know specifics. This is just, there's something in my brain that this whole discussion that Valerie brought up triggered. Do you remember there was a facility right by Trinity Church on 88th Street, just west of First Avenue, that was not a school? I think it was more of a tutoring place. And our discussion was the change of use, and would it be long-term or just for this? I don't know what the result was, Anthony, but I wonder if we could use that as a precedent. Do you remember what I'm talking about? It was
it was a tutoring program.
Yeah. And it was a major discussion, and to me, it sounds like it's a similar discussion. I don't know if legally it's exactly the same, but I wonder if we could find out what the result was and what we could do about it. You know, it was something else like that, what the result was.
Okay,
I have to tell you, I'm just so for this program because, I mean, I have grandkids, I know people with children. It's just such a desperate need. And if this means that young people will stay in New York, I'm all for it. So.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think that we can try and tease out that other example, even though they're not exactly.
Both with school education purposes, and it was both changing it so that if this purpose went away, I remember discussion, can we make a shoe store out of it or something like that? That was a major discussion that we had at the time. So yes. I don't know if that was useful or not, and I'm sorry if it wasn't.
Okay. Actually, Elaine reminds us that particular one was an issue that had to do with uses in an R8B district, not in the C1, whatever this is, C19.
Does that make a difference in terms of?
Yeah, it makes a difference because
okay.
they're different uses. Different uses are permitted in different sort of general density groups, and the avenues were specifically intended to be these sort of retail havens.
Which we're getting less and less and less of. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. All right, I'm going to come back to Michelle, and then to Marco, and then Elaine, whose hand is up. No, Elaine is taking her hand down. Okay, so Michelle and Marco.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Yeah, that was the Rhinelander mansion conversion that had not a kindergarten, it had a nursery school in there, and he was turning it into a tutoring thing, and he was getting some financing from the church. I remember it very well. My question here, well, two things. My question is, there's something in zoning, and you'll have to tell me if it applies here, where if something has a use for 2 years prior to that lease expiring, that use is automatically not permitted. No, it is permitted if you go forward. There's something about 2 years of use prior. Marco's shaking his head. Can you just clarify that for me? And then I have another question. Either you or Marco or anybody.
Happy to. I think what you're referring to is if it's an existing grandfathered non-conforming use. So for example, like the East Village, you get into East 8th Street, 9th Street, 7th Street, all those by Veselka. They've got all the shops on the side street between 1st and 2nd Avenue. Those are all grandfathered non-conforming uses. The same in the West Village. There's a couple of them on the Upper East Side. You get a couple of those shoe stores that are mid-block and things like that. Those are all grandfathered. And the rule that you're describing would be if they vacate the premises and they're empty for 2 years or more, they lose that grandfathered status.
Right.
Oh, that's right, because we had that whole thing with that restaurant. On
Yeah,
8th
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
So when they lose that status, do they revert back to the original zoning for that location?
Yes, they revert to the underlying zoning.
Okay. So in this case, would this revert?
No.
No, because
No.
the approval that's granted by city planning gives them the right to utilize it like that.
Okay. Now, because this is coming in front of the landmarks committee, excuse me, land use committee, and because I think we should put a number of restrictions in our whereas clauses, and because you and Deepti are going to investigate further as to what you can include as restrictions, which would answer some of Valerie's questions and other people's questions in terms of use in perpetuity. Because of all that, I'm wondering if it would not be appropriate for us to have a resolution tonight, but to wait for, Anthony, is that a no for no resolution or a no for yes a resolution?
No, I don't think we need a resolution tonight.
Okay. Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Co-chairs agreed.
Good.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That was my thing, because we don't have all of the information. And I think we all ought to work on our whereases that we can bring into the land use meeting so that we're prepared to have a full resolution when it's presented. So that's procedural. That's all I wanted to confirm with you. Okay. And I thank the presenters very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, and Marco, and then I think we have reached the end. Go ahead.
Thank you, Anthony. I think, let me be very clear. We are not denied the daycare center. The daycare center is approved for 62 kids on the cellar and 81 first on the first level. So we are not saying, and we are not discussing that part. That part is legal, period. Now, the only thing that we discuss is just only the enlargement of the frontage to use for this use. That's it. That's the only thing. So, one. And two, the only situation is where you applying, I think they become in perpetuity. If you apply as a variance, you know you have to recertify every 10 years, which is coincidental with the lease of the tenant. If the tenant is doing great, it's more likely they cannot do that. They cannot keep doing that. But if the tenant is not doing very well, maybe you gotta close the business. I don't know. Whatever it happens, but we cannot do, and that's, I feel, and that's the discussion right here, is if we can do it, this is enlargement, that's what it is, of the frontage in perpetuity or for 10 years. And the only way that you can get it is through a variance. Because in a variance, you have to come back every 10 years. And I think that will be that will be the discussion in this application, because keep in mind again, We are not denying any daycare center in this building. It's already approved. The only thing we discuss is the enlargement of the frontage of the street. That's it. So the situation is either we're going to do in perpetuity or we do it in 10 years. And the more logical part, it looks a variance. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? This has been, and I think Eric just went off video, but this has caused a lot of stress when we did sign this lease because we were very concerned about this. I would hate to be sitting here again in 10 years. So I just wanted to mention that if you're going to do, again, I don't know all the laws. If you're going to do something restricted, if it's just allowed for childcare so that we don't have to revisit this again, from my perspective, would be extremely important. I just wanted to mention that.
By the way, Anthony, one more thing. With the school that we approve right there on that you just mentioned, that was a landmark building. This school, they offer scholarships for our community, and that's what we support. So not only they change, but in addition, they provide a scholarship for members of our community. And that's basically, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I am late for an award ceremony for my wife, so I'm going to drop out of our call now. Thank you very much to the presenters and to my co-chairs who will continue in my absence. So thank you all.
Congratulations to Francesca.
Thank you.
Yes.
So did we drop off? We drop off, right?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Thank you from the behalf of all the families and the children. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. My camera, I turned off because the battery was dying. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes,
Thank
I want to thank you as well. I'm one of the co-chairs, and I think to sum up very briefly what you heard every concern that people have, which is, I think, boiling down to, yes, you're wonderful, but we want to make sure that we don't get a monster to follow you. And I think that we have the land use coming up and next month, and I think maybe we could ask you to come up with any solutions you can to that, to get what we want and prevent what we don't want. So we'd be very grateful for your proposals at the land use meeting. And thank you very much for your proposal.
Thank you, Miss Ashby. We appreciate your commentary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
And
Yes.
now the next item is Adam Wald, who's a member of the community board and of our committee, and he has a zoning proposal for Upper Yorkville, and he's going to describe that to us now.
Thank you. I had made some changes to the first couple of pages. I guess I didn't send it in time for it to get posted. I was wondering, can I share my screen? Do I have that ability?
You
Yeah,
should
it's
be able
available.
to.
Okay. Let's show this. And can you see it?
Small. And Adam, if you don't mind emailing that to us afterwards, we'll make
I
sure it's
will.
posted into the.
So I'll make it so you can see it now.
Yes, much better.
Okay. So this is nothing too formal. I was just hoping that we would restart this effort that we had sort of shelved about a year ago while we were in the mix of a number of other larger neighborhood proposals that took a lot of commitment from our committee and from the board itself. And I was wondering if we could try to restart this. There's been a couple updates on a citywide level that I think encourage this project. And I just want to run through them very quickly. For a little background, there are three portions of the upper portion of the Upper East Side that are zoned C8-4 and M1-4. And these zoning districts are more commercial and light manufacturing districts that permit development uses or land uses such as self-storage facilities, manufacturing buildings, life science buildings, office buildings. And these are areas in which we think could be rezoned for uses that would further benefit the neighborhood, primarily for residential, so that we could develop more rental housing and specifically affordable rental housing in the neighborhood. So going to the next page, why do we need a rezoning? So for years and years and years, as long as I can remember being on the board, the primary goal in the district needs statement has always been for more affordable housing. We haven't done much in the district to promote the development of affordable housing. So I'm hoping that something like this can kind of reach that goal, that we continue to profess as a #1 district need. This neighborhood was recently identified in the Borough President's Housing Manhattanites report as a housing opportunity. And the report pointed to these specific areas. So in the neighborhood now, the demand for housing, especially affordable housing, is at an all-time high. Landlords continue to warehouse units, partly because the HSTPA, or the Housing Stability Tenant Protection Act, does not allow landlords to renovate units and increase rents. So a lot of units are being kept off the market because it's not feasible to renovate apartments. And rents have never been higher in Manhattan, and they've never been higher in the Upper East Side. Tenants are experiencing a very high rent burden, which is expressed as a rent as a percentage of income. And in New York City, it's a record high for the nation. And within New York City, it's the highest it's ever been. So the main goals and benefits are to rezone these two areas to eliminate the artificial barrier that exists between Isaacs and Holmes and the balance of the Upper East Side. And we think that this will create a framework to promote more affordable housing and more rental housing. Ever since 2016, all rezonings in the city of New York require mandatory inclusionary housing, which would set aside 25 to 30% of all units being developed as affordable housing. And one of the other goals would be to discourage the type of development we've seen in these little pockets of Upper Yorkville, which would be, the 140-foot plus self-storage building, and then the proposed life science project on East 94th Street, and other auto-related and other noxious uses. So since April 2022, which was the last time we really spoke about this together, the Department of City Planning has discouraged our neighborhood's pursuit of a 210-foot height limit on the avenues. And while I know that a lot in the community are not happy about this, this could present an opportunity to build denser housing in these pockets. I remind you that M1-4 and C8-4 zonings do not currently have a height limit. So if we were to develop dense, affordable housing and mixed income housing, we would be doing so in a zoning district that currently does not have a height limit. The city has also put forth the City of Yes and the City of Housing Opportunity programs to expand opportunity for more affordable housing. And since April 22 and now, Block 1540, which is the Friedland project, is nearing pre-certification. And they will mainly aim to build a 46-story tower with a roof height of 484 feet. And they're going to be coming before us sooner than later. So the components of the rezoning would be to rezone these blocks, these portions of these 6 blocks, and look to do more higher density uses. Again, the current zonings do not have a height limit. So if we were to build dense housing, it would be something that would still be within somewhat of a framework of the current zoning. And in order to build this dense housing, we might have to establish some special permits for bulk waivers and to facilitate the high density development. And at this point, I was hoping for next steps would be to establish a subcommittee or a working group within zoning and development to kind of carry this effort a little further. And then so we can connect with city planning to start a conversation and reach out to local stakeholders to get community input and connect with the private applicants, which would be Friedland for block 1540. Again, they're going to be coming before us sooner than later. The rest of the presentation is just some of the numbers and the maps of the blocks. But for now, I guess we could just leave it there. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If anyone has any input, we'd be happy to hear.
I'm going to recognize people to talk to you, but I'm going to disappear for 2 minutes because the dog walker's coming and you don't want to hear my dog's comments on this subject. So Rita Popper is the first speaker, and if we need, Sharon will recognize the next if I'm not liberated by then.
Adam, this is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I hope that we've gotten you over to the other side of affordable housing. I just want to add one side note of how important this really is. This year, in order to have our application for community board approved, it was breakout sessions, and we were from every different district in Manhattan. And Ed Hartzog was in a different one. I was in a different one on a different day. And the answer came out the same. The number one thing, the number one concern was the need for affordable housing. I saw Tricia Chiamora on Saturday, and she said it was unanimous across the board of how important this is. What do we have to do to make it happen? Brilliant.
Was that a rhetorical question, or was that a directed question to me?
Well, it's a question. What do you see? What do you think the first step is that's going to make this happen?
I mean, I think we need to really get together and establish somewhat of a working group or a subcommittee within zoning and development to really drill down on a lot by lot basis how this is going to happen, what the most feasible development sites will be now and down the road, and what the real goals are for the project and for the neighborhood in general. Understanding that there are currently several parcels that are improved with rent stabilized housing, and we wouldn't dare look to disrupt those folks. But there are some sites that could be put together to facilitate larger projects and more dense housing.
I just want you to all remember that affordable housing built communities, built the entire Upper West Side. There was nothing above 86th Street before that. And now look at what has happened. So it is financially positive to a community to do affordable housing. And we must figure out a way to do it. Adam, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Next, Michelle.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So let me just ask a couple of detailed questions that I don't know the answer to. So it's not the community that's building affordable housing. It's going to be developers that are building affordable housing. And they may have a mandatory percentage for inclusionary housing in projects that they build. Why is it beneficial to rezone these areas rather than have developers come with proposals for development and we grant variances based on the project before us? It just seems to me that while the motivation here is a good one, it's relinquishing control for what comes in. To me, these sites are standing there with, as you say, a storage facility, maybe a parking lot, whatever is there. For a developer who wants to build, they are magnet sites. They would be attracted to this. We know that developers are looking for sites, 24/7. That's what they do for a living, and that's what they want. What's to stop them from coming to us with a proposal to build on any one of these sites, tell us the variances that they need, and then in that way, we have control over the height, we have control over what's going in, and we as a board will think in terms of inclusionary housing and what, Now, bear in mind, once you're going to a private developer, he's got to make a profit. And to make a profit, when you put in the amount of inclusionary housing that is the percentage that's suggested or required, they make that up in height. So these are going to be high buildings, which may be fine. That may be fine, but wouldn't it be better to have them come to us and then we decide how high on this street, how far off the corner, is it this lot or that lot, and what we should do? So if my reasoning is flawed for some reason, I'm happy to listen and let me know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the facts, but from my point of view, I would rather leave them, if what I'm saying is true, I would rather leave these sites as they are. They're very much in the crosshairs of developers, and let the developers come to us with proposals.
So again, I'm not a land use attorney, and nor do I pretend to be. But in general, it seems what you're suggesting is a bunch of individual spot rezonings. And spot rezonings are generally frowned upon in the state and the city. There are a few areas in the city in which individual parcels are rezoned one by one. I'm thinking of, I think it's Community Board 2 or 3 in Brooklyn along Atlantic Avenue. But Atlantic Avenue has established what's called the M Crown. They established a broader neighborhood plan with goals for densities and uses, and then a bunch of folks have rezoned individual sites one by one in accordance with this broader M Crown plan. Now the M Crown now is going to turn into a larger rezoning of the neighborhood. So if we are to do something that you're suggesting, I think we need to establish a M Crown type neighborhood plan for these sites. So it would be kind of like an understanding within the neighborhood and like a published framework, but not a rezoning. And I don't know if the city in generally is encouraging that going forward. We'd have to talk to city planning about that. But otherwise, what you're suggesting is individual spot rezonings, which are not really desired planning.
Let me, because I didn't understand something, I would like to hear more about that M plan or how it's organized or what it is exactly.
M Crown. M Crown.
But the other question is, are each of these sites big enough for only one building? I mean, I can't judge the size of it. Is it a zoning lot for one building?
It depends how the parcels come together and are assembled. There are some larger parcels here, but there are a bunch of smaller parcels that would probably need to be put together to build something of a decent scale.
So is that information that we should have before we have any resolution? I know you're
Oh, for
proposing
sure.
a
For sure.
subcommittee, so could
For
that
sure.
be part of the information? In other words, what are our alternatives for getting affordable housing, keeping the community in control of what goes there, and not do some kind of a broad stroke of changing the zoning, which will affect every parcel in that area?
Right. So I think since we're working with there's really 3 areas, but one of them is essentially spoken for by the Friedland project, and they're full speed ahead on their project. And I was almost going to eliminate it from this presentation because they're on their merry way to do this project. So we're really focusing on the 2 C8-4 portions, and we have to look at each parcel and be very targeted about what we as a neighborhood want with respect to density, height, ground floor uses, whether this needs to be an M1 or whether it needs to be a paired district, or whether it can be just a fully rezoned district. I just was looking to restart the effort and restart the conversation and kind of see that we can establish some of these next steps right now, which was, put a team together, put a group together to kind of carry this.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth Rose?
Thank you, Elizabeth. First of all, I would like to volunteer to be a participant should we form a subcommittee or some sort of a task force on this. And I really appreciate, Adam, your persistence in bringing this forward again. And maybe this question is getting at a little bit of what Michelle was trying to understand in a different way. Can you explain how upzoning or changing the zoning for these lots would help control the height of the potential buildings that could be built on a piecemeal basis with individual ULURP processes? I mean, I get that it's less desirable for a developer to have to go through an individualized process for each individual lot, but is there something else about this proposal that helps control height?
Well, my main focus is use versus height. Again, as I said in the beginning, C8-4 does not have a stated height cap. If someone were really determined, they could bundle a whole bunch of parcels together under the C8-4 and build a large commercial building as tall as the zoning would permit. So for me, it's more about use, residential use, MIH use, so that we can create a framework to build mixed income housing and essentially rental housing in the district.
Got it. Thank you. And for anybody who has not read the New York Times articles about affordable housing in Vienna, I highly recommend taking a look.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Craig?
Hi, first off, actually, before I speak, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a resolution and speak to it if seconded. My resolution would simply be that community board, or something to this extent, that community board 8 supports efforts to address the potential rezoning of M14 and C8-4 districts in the Upper East Side, and we could specify the specific blocks that we're talking about to make them into residential zoning. Is there a second? All right, I see Rita seconded. So first off, I just want to thank Adam so much for spearheading this proposal. And I just, to provide a little context, I live a block away from the self-storage site that's now nearly complete on 90th Street. And I think it should be painted red to symbolize the red flag that the building is really in terms of being of completely inappropriate use on that particular block. And I fear that if we don't soon act, we'll miss the opportunity to prevent other sites from being built up with uses that we don't really need, as opposed to the housing that we most desperately need. So I know we can obviously work out details going forward, but I think we need to avoid unnecessary delay and get the ball rolling to start this process formally. So simply put, I think this proposal should be the new priority of this committee. It's a win-win-win, and I struggle to think of any valid reason that city planning wouldn't be anxious to partner with us and work with us on this, as unlike the height limit proposal, where clearly we were not necessarily conforming to priorities of city planning and this administration, this absolutely would. So that's my resolution. I just also have a question in terms of, I guess, what the process is going forward. And as I said, I'm more concerned about expediency with this. And yes, I would, I think we should definitely have a subcommittee to talk about this further, but what else do we need to do to get this process potentially, to get the ball rolling on this process, such as, will we need a consultant? How do we start going about pre-applications and really trying to move this forward? I just fear that if we go to a subcommittee first, that it's just going to delay the process and all these sites are going to be eaten up under the current zoning by developers. Thank you.
And I myself need a little more guidance on what the process is vis-a-vis timeline and who we engage first, whether it's city planning or we engage borough president, or whether we bring on a professional to help us create a framework. So that's my first immediate goal, is to find out exactly what the very next step should be. If anyone has any ideas or suggestions, I would love to hear it. But I think that forming a team within zoning and development should certainly be an early step. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
And I'll just add, I think the underlying point of my resolution is, whether that happens now or later, I just want to at least have us on record as supporting this effort, so we can start the process formally and not have to wait. And perhaps if we do need a consultant, for example, at least we already have the resolution in hand, and such. All right, that's it for me for now.
Thank you. I think we've got to, we're all for affordable housing. This is, this is all, apple pie. But I think, in my observation, the city has an awful problem of thinking about the consequences of their proposals. You propose affordable housing and it's wonderful, but you forget about the drawbacks of your proposal, not yours, but one's proposal. So I think this is something, affordable housing is necessary, but I think, and we want to have it, but we have to consider what the price you pay for it. In the past, for a very little bit of affordable housing, and often the loss of affordable housing that was taken down, we paid the price of huge buildings and the loss of some affordable housing for very little affordable housing. And I think that this must be considered very, very carefully. I think before one starts, we should read, I read your previous, but this is the first time I've seen your current proposal. And I think we ought to have perhaps questions from this because nobody has seen this. And then perhaps start
Sorry, I'm on a Zoom
next
call right
week,
now.
considering.
Oh, yeah,
But anyway,
yes.
that's a
Thank
thought.
you. Thank you.
If I could I just want to have just a tiny bit of pushback.
Who's
on-
talking?
I think it's Sharon. If I could have a tiny bit of pushback on the, I guess, your skepticism. As long as I can remember, and I think we can pull up the historic district need statements. Affordable housing has been the #1 need. Can anyone think of a single initiative that this board has put forth to promote affordable housing in 10 years? A single initiative that this board has put forth. At some point, you have to stop paying lip service to these district need statements, essentially lying in the production of these documents, and step up and promote the development of affordable housing. That's all I have to say. Because so far, nothing has been done.
Okay, thank you. Marco?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Adam. I think you're very persistent. I think you remove with the part that I was going to ask you, but I think that's the right thing to do it, by the way. The first question that come into myself, who's paying that? Who's paying this process? Where is the money for that?
Well,
to do the changes.
The idea is to create, a 8.5, 10, or 12 FAR zoning, such that 25% of it would be affordable and the rest would be market. So
No, I'm sorry, you misunderstand. Who is paying this change of use from commercial to residential? Who paying in city planning? Who is putting the planning? Who is the applicant? Who all this kind of the question? This is the question that I'm asking.
Well,
I'm asking
it's not atypical for a community board to be an applicant. There are certain special district extensions and certain applications in which the community board itself is an applicant, potentially a co-applicant with another nonprofit. It would not be unreasonable for the community board itself to be an applicant, similar, just like it was for the 210.
Well, okay.
That's the answer.
So the question is still we don't know where it's coming from, the money to do this change of use, because it's you know very well, and it takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and all these kind of concerns. 1, 2. Michelle describes something to control, and then you said, "Oh, there's a spot planning." I agree with that part, but at least the point is we have to control the affordable housing. That's the only way we will control. And if you're going to say R10, do you think that the developers cannot build any affordable housing? Absolutely not. I can prove it to you. I did a survey, and the developer, of course, they are business person. They don't provide welfare to nobody, and I respect their opinions, unless you put something very critical in this part. It has to be, if you want to produce affordable housing, the only way that I know is either what Michelle described, or it has to be a mandatory inclusionary housing.
Marco, all rezonings in New York City since 2016 are subject to mandatory inclusionary housing. This would be a mandatory inclusionary housing rezoning.
So you're saying that there's gonna be a mandatory inclusionary housing?
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
So now you're talking about, now you're saying one more thing. What be calling my attention, your statements is we have a chance to fight with the developer and two developers and 3 developers actually, 2 in 83rd and 2nd Avenue and 1 in 72nd. And the developer came and said, I want to remove the easement. And I think you vote in favor of the developers. But why we don't have a chance? Even now you are claiming that you are going in the direction of the affordable housing, and why you didn't support to go to the developer saying build affordable housing, in order to have an easement, a free benefit for the developer. So suddenly I found that right here that is not coherent your point of view right now. I mean, what I'm trying to go in that direction is, I had to be very sure I will support as long as I see it that is guaranteed that affordable housing, it will be built, which is gonna be very hard, believe me. And I'm gonna touch just a little bit in that direction. To build affordable housing, I don't think it's cheap. My calculations easily, it's gonna go to build one affordable housing, it's approximately $1 million, one unit. And we seen that the developers that come in and demolish affordable housing without no concern for nobody. The last developer is 52 dwelling units. So if the city wanna build affordable housing and to compensate this 52, it has to have $52 million or more. So, and the city has no resource for that direction. Somebody said, oh, we have $25 billion. No, we don't have 25 billion. If you compare with that amount of money, the cost of the construction, it will be almost, it's relatively minor in comparison with the deficit of affordable housing that we have in the entire city, not only in our community. So the only situation is, myself is, I'm for to support this application as long as a guarantee that affordable, a mandatory inclusionary housing happens. Otherwise, it means it will be just only a good benefit for the developers or for the landowner of those lots. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry to be so aggressive.
Hey, I love it, and I have essentially answers for both of your questions. MIH. It has to be, there's no point in pushing this forward unless it's MIH. It would be antithetical to the entire process. The easement you were speaking about, I believe that's Mr. Torkian's project. That's an as-of-right project. And the MTA sent the letter that said that Mr. Torkian does not have to provide an easement volume. You want me to go and tell him, no, you need to do an affordable project. And no, the MTA is wrong. I don't really understand what you're asking.
No, what I'm saying is, at the time when we vote in the community board, you cannot go beyond that because that is unfair. I'm saying just only in the community board, you should.
It's a waste of time to ask someone to tell them that their as-of-right project needs to have affordable housing, and it makes us look ridiculous. Anyway.
Thank you, Marco. I see a couple of members of the public that we should go to. Joe, and would you give your full name, please?
Yes, Joseph O'Rourke. Hello, how are you? Just a few points here. Overall concern about the height of buildings, especially mid-block. I do understand the need for affordable housing, very important. I just feel like we're getting away in the last 25, 30 years. We've been building these huge buildings, tearing down affordable housing, and building above market buildings. I live near one that's been empty for 2 years. We took down a whole entire block. So there was no affordable housing there. So I'm very concerned when we talk about a 46-story building that's mid-block. One thing. Another thing, I know we had the proposal for Lenox Hill at 841 Park Avenue. It was proposed for a 490-foot tall tower there, which seemed to evaporate. So I'm a little concerned with the area that we're picking. It seems to be in maybe a lower income area who they don't have a choice sort of about these projects. And I don't understand why the Park Avenue one sort of disappeared, which is a little bit interesting. Also, and I'm so all for public housing just to move the height down. And also, is there any opportunity to attack warehousing apartments, because it seems to be happening all over the place? And I think those are my points. Oh, also with Friedland Properties, does that come up? Is there a relation to the board with that company? Not sure if
Friedland. Yeah, I mean, I can answer some of the questions.
Yeah. Sorry.
Friedland has no relation to the board. Not that I know of. I believe William used to be a board member decades ago. And as your comment about opportunity to warehouse apartments, it's simple. The state legislature passed the HSTPA. The HSTPA says that your rent can only increase between $83 and $86 if the unit continues to be stabilized. So a unit could have $100,000 worth of work required, which is required by the DOB in order to give you use of the unit. And the unit could have $100,000 worth of work required. You can only increase that unit by either $83 or $86. That's a law. It's being challenged in the Supreme Court, hopefully. But that's why units are being warehoused, because it's not financially feasible to rent many tens of thousands rent stabilized units. So that's the answer to that. Hopefully something will be fixed on that end, but to be determined.
Okay, thank you. And now another Elaine Walsh.
Thank you. Adam, thank you. I know you've been pushing this. And Joe, I agree. Why are we on the northern part of our district? My question is, we've not fully analyzed how those lots are used. We are not just a residential community. We're mixed use. We have a need for commercial and manufacturing. And I'm concerned that you get some developers in, quote unquote, under affordable, which I'd like to have defined, because it shouldn't be affordable. It should be workforce housing. And we should move away from this label that none of us really understand, because the prices of affordable for a one bedroom are going to $3,000 to $4,000. So I think there has to be a lot of analysis done as to what is the benefit, not to the community, but to the city. We are the most dense community in the city. Indeed, those side streets where we have the manufacturing and the C8s were left alone because they did not configure with the R8B zoning when rezoning was done. I would like to see they come into conformity with the R8B, and if they don't, we have some guarantee that there's workforce housing. We know in our district, I can tell you on 79th at 200 East, it was to be affordable. There's not one unit in there. There has been no way for this city to track and monitor what has been required when a developer must put affordable housing in the building itself. I'm very skeptical about moving ahead and changing any zoning without understanding what the needs are, and what is best for the community. Everything is not affordable housing, because as Elizabeth is known for, you might call it affordable, but can you live here? And we are becoming outpriced in the purchase of daily needs. I just saw today, grapes go up $3 a pound. Is that the holiday rate? I don't know. But we need to look at being contextual when we are building, that we can afford to have stores that meet the needs of the community. So you want to look at it. I think it's premature to set up a task force. I think it's premature to look at this without some other investigative work that will ensure we understand what the parameters are of moving forward in looking at a few lots in the 90s. Thank you.
If I can reiterate what I spoke about earlier in addressing Marco's concerns, MIH, it's as simple as that. MIH option one, it's pretty deep affordable requirements for the AMI bands. So
our community is not zoned for MIH, even with if you want to rezone. When people hear, oh, if I rezone, I could do MIH, they pull out. That's what happened on Park Avenue and 76th Street for Joe. That was one of the reasons they pulled out. It had nothing to do with anything, that they couldn't get a developer who wanted to put on Park Avenue some affordable housing units within that building. So Adam, it may say MIH, we are not zoned, we were never under the de Blasio administration part of that whole piece. And so
I think I think that's not entirely correct. And that rezonings are subject to MIH. What was going on in Park Avenue, I think there was a lot of moving pieces. Part of which you had a community, Park Avenue in the 70s, folks who were not going to be really tolerant of that. And you also had a hard height cap of 210 feet in the Park Improvement District, something that was really not able to be violated. And there's, I think, a lot of things came together to prevent that. I think Park Avenue in the 70s for that type of project is entirely different than a C8-4 zone property in the 90s.
no, Adam, I'm sorry. The Lenox Hill or Northwell pulled out when they realized what their limitations were, including the MIH. It had nothing to do, and if when they proposed that, they didn't know the 210 height limit, shame on them.
They did, but MIH survives, and MIH is something that this rezoning would encourage.
Move on. I don't want to really fight the issue right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. And now is Maggie L. a member of the public? Would you please unmute Maggie L. and would you identify yourself?
This is Maggie. Yes, I am a member of the public. I think a lot of you know me. Maggie Lehman. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I only wanted to, in the discussion of this, which I think is an underlying very good idea because it's anticipatory, I wanted to log in this suggestion that the committee take a cautionary tale from the brutal blood center fight that Elizabeth Rose and Murray, if you're both still on the call, were so instrumental in helping on, and which all of Community Board 8 was, but both with respect to the notion of the use, and Adam, you're focused on the use. Here we had, as we all know, a residential small, narrow side street like these side streets in the upper 90s and the low 90s that you're talking about. But in addition, on 67th Street, it was zoned residential, and it was zoned RB8, residential with a 75-foot height. All of that fell by the wayside, as we know. My bringing it up so that in moving forward in this current proposal, which speaks to me of, like, as I said, anticipatory preparedness, and for that I think the focus on the use is a smart one, because now we've got a use in the life science use there that is not beneficial to that side street. The life science building with its enhanced mechanicals, its enhanced and loud ventilation system, its signage, its round-the-clock lighting, all of the commercial-related uses which are harmful to that other previously used residential street. In addition, speaking to the earlier comments by some of the committee members that the Community Board 8 and this committee might have some control if they wait till the developer comes to the Community Board 8, another cautionary tale I'd like us all to remember is that while we thought we'd have some control during the ULURP process. As it turned out, our control was not especially vital. We had a lot more impact because of our fierce fight, because of Community Board 8's fierce fight, because of some of the residents and fight and Friends of the Upper East Side, Borough President. I mean, we got further than I think we might have otherwise gotten. That said, we certainly didn't have full control by any stretch. The money that the developer, whether it's a residential developer or in this case a commercial, the money that the developer had to spend in lobbying and in the access to city council proved harmful to us. All by way of saying that let's keep in mind the lessons we learned as you move forward. I like, as a member of the public, Adam's thoughtfulness and his trying to be prepared to prevent the storage units. I know 91st Street has had a terrible time with that huge storage unit that's being built there now, and with Tectonics now, having built the life science there too. So those are my comments for what it's worth. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. And the next member of the public is Elizabeth Suarez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Suarez, and I'm part of the community here in Yorkville. I live actually across from the lab that is being built on 94th Street. So this feels very personal to me. I just think it's all the points that were made earlier are great, and I just want to make sure that I vocalize my concerns with this proposal. I'm an architect myself. I work for developers, and I gotta say, there has to be a lot of measurements taken into account just to make sure that we're not giving anyone the job already done for them. So a lot of it feels like that when I saw that the pages on the FAR, but again, I think it's also great to be ahead of the game and see if we can avoid other projects like this being built across from my apartment building. And then again, I think just to make another point that was mentioned earlier, it would be great if we look at the sites that are also more south. I think this is a particular area in the neighborhood that is really interesting. And I want to say it's maybe more people should come up here and walk around. So just wanted to make sure that this is really taken serious and we make sure that all the measurements are taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next member of the public is Kathleen Steed.
Yes, I've lived in the upper 90s for the last 50 years. Have seen it go through a huge number of changes. My actual question is really easy. Is there a map of what is now present in the blocks you're talking about, and then what you propose? I know you skipped through the maps, but I was wondering, is there a map of what is there now and then what you propose?
I don't have anything specifically proposed. I think we're going to get a lot of what's appropriate from community input, whether it's on the board, whether it's community stakeholders, and even city planning hopefully will weigh in, and they'll tell us how this all fits in a larger housing plan. So there's nothing technically proposed. So
okay, how about what is here now? So I can copy screenshot.
Oh, this portion of it is there now. I mean, we have this portion of the presentation is on the website.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you. I see no more members of the public, so we'll go to Rita Popper.
Adam is asking for a subcommittee to study the feasibility of this, and that's all he's asking for. Everybody bristles when they hear affordable housing, and everyone says affordable for who? Things can happen, not with our current developers, but maybe there are new developers. Maybe there is city, federal money. Something can be done when there is a problem. Right now, that's all Adam is asking for, is a subcommittee to work on the zoning and development to study the feasibility. Can we have that? Should I make that as a motion or? No, not a motion.
I think technically is Craig's motion still on the floor?
Motion is to what?
Kind of do what you suggested, but less defined.
I am happy to include that in a resolution. I had remember the more generic language that we support efforts to address existing M14 and C84 zoning in the lower 90s, or we'll specify the specific blocks, and seek to pursue potential rezoning that would be residential in nature. And we could modify that. We could add to it, say that we want to start with the subcommittee now. I just want to keep it flexible enough so that we can just do whatever we need to allow us to move forward with this without having to come back in the future to this committee and then to the full board and then have this relitigate this whole discussion again. I don't want to wait until we've done all the analysis to essentially hopefully confirm that we should be doing this. We should be getting the start now and getting our gears in motion before we lose too much time on this.
I second your motion. Call the question. You know, stop. This can go on half the night.
Yeah.
Only half the night.
We're asking for a working group. Are you against a working group? No. So that's all we're asking. That's all Craig is asking for. Am I correct, Craig?
If that's what's going to gain enough support, then that's fine. I was hoping maybe to go a step further to just say we support, want to include language in there that says we support efforts to rezone these existing manufacturing commercial districts, or aim to do it with the goal of making them residential. I don't want to lose the ability to establish a subcommittee if that's going to get in the way, but I would hope that we could go a step further than that. Nothing formal, obviously no details yet because we just don't know them, and those would need to be worked out. And obviously there's a lot to figure out as we begin that analysis. I just want to make sure that we're really starting the process now.
Absolutely.
So Craig, I just have a quick question for clarification. I can support a working group. Is it possible that the resolution that you're suggesting just encompasses a working group to study this?
I would like to at least begin right now with the language I said regarding looking at rezoning the commercial and manufacturing zoning that's in place. If that doesn't work and we need a substitute resolution or a different resolution, then that's fine with me as well. But I would like to at least see if we can go a step further than that initially. Again, not saying not going too far with it, but I think it's important to at least establish that this committee believes that the need for additional residential housing is a critical need in this community, and that we're making a statement that we need that residential housing. And obviously we will figure out how to do it to ensure that it's not going to produce ultra luxury buildings that are too tall.
So
Those
Rita
are
called
the
a
pieces to
question
work out.
and
Can you
I
define
think
too tall? It was sounding beautiful until the last two sentences, just the last two words.
Okay, I can keep that out also.
You had me at hello, but the too tall.
Okay, I'll zip my lips.
Okay, let's, yeah,
I think you don't want, we have several people who want to contribute to this discussion.
Elizabeth, technically,
Michelle, and I think we want to make it brief, brief so that we move ahead. But we have Michelle Birnbaum, and then Elizabeth Rose, and then Sharon Pope Marshall, and then Judy Schneider, and so, and then Marco Tamayo. So let us.
I can go last. I can go last, Elizabeth. So,
sorry, can you guys hear me? Procedurally, if somebody calls the question and it's seconded, it was seconded by Elizabeth Rose, you need to vote on the calling of the question. And if it fails, then the people can raise their hand again and continue conversation, but it is not a debatable motion.
yeah, thank you so much for that, and appreciate that clarification. However, in the past, we have had, and the chairs have allowed for additional discussion, so it has not always been so cut and dry. But you know, that's left up to Elizabeth.
Well, I think, to be fair, I would prefer that we allow people briefly to present their ideas before we go ahead. And if we want to call the question, I would be very grateful if you would repeat your motion. But have we got a parliamentarian here that
Elizabeth, you know, I've lowered my hand, so we basically have 4 people. I say maybe we cut it off.
I can't hear this person.
I'm sorry?
Who's talking?
Oh, that's Sharon.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, my recommendation might be that we, with the 4 people that we have, that we allow up to Marco. I've lowered my hand, and unless, you know, one of those 4 call the question. No, the question has been called, so we just allow those 4, and that's it.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
Okay.
you.
Yes, no problem.
Are you suggesting that we call the question?
The question's already been called.
Yeah, the question has been already. Yes, I do apologize. So my suggestion is that we hear from Michelle, Elizabeth, Judy, Marco, and then we cut it off, and that's it. You know, unless, I mean, this is completely up to you.
You're suggesting that we let them speak?
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay with you?
Who me?
Who called the question?
This is correct. I called the question. I mean, I think if we had a parliamentarian here, they'd say we need to take a vote on it.
Right.
I'm not going to be I'm going to yield to the chairs. I don't think that's my decision, but that would be my recommendation too.
I would say, generally speaking, we allow chairs to suspend the use of Robert's rules on an ad hoc basis, on a case by case basis. If you would like to suspend Robert's rules, that is perfectly fine. But by Robert's rules, if somebody calls the question and it is
I
seconded,
know that.
so just suspend Robert's rules and move on.
Yes, we usually, out of courtesy to our fellow members, when somebody calls the question, when several people.
I was just
have
explaining the proper procedure. You were asking if there was a parliamentarian. The district manager is just giving you what the Roberts rules are about it. You do not ever have to take the parliamentarian or take the district manager's insight on it. You guys have authority as chairs. So let's move to Michelle and then Elizabeth Rose and then Judy and Marco.
Thank you very much. Let me just point out also that the person who called the question spoke extensively before calling the question. So in truth, that was not parliamentary correct. But let's move on because we have spent more time on discussing this than all of our comments will add up to. All I want to say is this. Since we're all in agreement that we want to form a task force or a subcommittee to study this, I would be opposed to any resolution except that one, because Craig's resolution presumes a possible conclusion. Now, when you're when you're forming a task force to study something, you don't include the conclusion in the task in your resolution. His resolution is saying to consider rezoning. No, that's a conclusion for the task force to make and for the task force to come up with such a conclusion. So you don't suggest a task force, and we want to focus on changing the zoning. No, you want to form a task force. I don't think you really need a resolution to form a task force, but if that were the resolution and that was the wording, I'm okay with that. I think we should have a task force. But if you're going to have a suggested conclusion or tell you what the task force should be studying, which you're saying you want them to study a change of zoning, that is predetermining what the task force will do. So I'm completely opposed to any resolution. We don't need it, but I think it would be terrific to have a task force, and then we'll see what the task force decides. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Rose?
I raised my hand to call the question on Craig's original resolution, and the question having been called and seconded, I strongly request that we vote on the resolution.
I think we've heard several
Elizabeth?
people, including yourself. Judy Schneider, Marco Tamayo quickly, and then we'll vote on it. And let's make sure what on earth we're voting on. Okay, Judy?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'd like to put a substitute motion on the floor to form a task force to study this issue. If it's seconded, I think Marco is seconding my substitute.
But we already called to question. We should not be.
No, Craig, you spoke and called the question. That's not legal.
No. I didn't call the question. I raised the resolution. Others called the question.
Okay. I think we have to know who did that, because I don't think that's what happened.
Rita Popper called the question. It was seconded. And now Elizabeth Rose has called the question again.
Okay, then I withdraw my motion and I'm with Elizabeth. Let's vote.
Yeah.
Marco?
Thank you. Parliament procedure. I'm sorry. The parliament procedure said you cannot speak. You cannot say anything. You must call the question. That is the word. Judy Schneider is correct. And since she withdraw her substitute motion, I cannot do anything. Since I spoke, I cannot call the question. That is parliament procedure, because you cannot speak and then call the question. That has been doing erroneously in most of the meetings.
Yeah,
And that
excuse me.
has to be very clear, to be fair
Marco,
with everybody.
We have had a second on the floor for this motion for a long time. As I understand the motion, Craig's motion, it is to support affordable housing at on the lots that Adam discussed earlier. Is that a correct synopsis?
No, that was not correct. My resolution was to support efforts to rezone the existing M14 and C84 that exists, the existing zoning, and to pursue residential zoning, and to have a task force. I would love to include affordable, but that wasn't part of my initial one because I didn't know how to. I'm not trying to be too prescriptive here.
No, I get it. So it's to support the rezoning and support affordable housing.
Support efforts to rezone and to have a subcommittee so as not to preclude us from being able to.
Okay. Let's stick with those. Let's stick with those 2 points. Elizabeth, do you? Okay, so we have clarity.
Craig's motion is not just to form the task force, it's to support the affordable housing and support the rezoning or whatever it was.
Residential, I didn't say
affordable. That is correct. Because his original motion, which he
So
prefers,
you're presuming the objective as opposed to those who want a task force to study the issue.
Okay.
Again, I said I did not say affordable. I said residential.
Oh, residential, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
And I said efforts to. I did not say support rezoning. I said efforts to rezone. Did not say supports rezoning.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought.
Okay. So.
Okay. I guess we could take the vote on that.
So before we vote,
Kevin, can you?
All in favor of calling the question, Elizabeth?
Excuse me?
Will was going to give some instructions. Let's.
I can't hear.
Yeah, it's okay. Before we vote, we should read into the record how many board members are here. But also, we do have a couple of new members here, at least one I see. So the way we vote in our committees and on Zoom, if this is your first time, you will raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. If you are voting yes, you are assumed to be voting yes. We don't need you to explain your vote. So just leave your hand down and you'll be counted as a yes. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, that is when you use the raise hand feature to raise your hand. So first, all the members who are here, just for the video record, Adam Wald, Craig Lader, Elizabeth Ashby, Sharon Pope Marshall, Rita Popper, Barbara Rudder, Elizabeth Rose, Gail Barron, John McClement, Judy Schneider, Juno Chola Song. You will teach me how to say your name if I mispronounce anything. Lindsay Cormack, Marco Tamayo, Michelle Birnbaum, Peggy Price, Sherry Weiner, Valerie Mason. Is there anyone I missed who is a board member? Okay.
Did you say Gail?
I believe I did, but if I did not, Gail Barron is also here.
Oh, okay.
So with that, if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause on this resolution, please raise your virtual hand and we will unmute you to explain your vote. All right, Michelle, go ahead.
No, for the reasons I stated.
Thank you. We don't. Thank you. Yes. Peggy, please just say yes, no, abstain, or don't say
No.
yes. Thank you. Elizabeth Ashby.
No.
Thank you. Marco Tamayo.
No.
No. All right. Thank you. Sherry Weiner.
No.
Thank you. Sharon Pope Marshall.
No.
Thank you. Valerie Mason.
No.
Thank you. Gail Barron.
No.
All right. Are there any other board members who would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause? Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that passes.
Thank you.
You do have two hands up following the passage of that from Gail Barron and Valerie Mason. There are 18 members present. That was not over 9. Would you like to call on Gail or Valerie?
You're not, this is Gail, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to lower my hand. My phone is being kind of cranky. So I have no other comments other than I voted against the resolution.
Thank you. Marco?
And Valerie was
I
next.
think Valerie was ahead of me.
Yes.
Valerie? Or
Thank you, Mark.
also-
Hold on. I have so many. Sorry, apologize. I would like to understand what the motion was that was just voted on, because I had to switch locations and I am still unclear as to what you all voted on. I think I want to change my vote to an abstention because I can't, it went back and forth so many times that I have no idea. And I couldn't get in to say, the question was called 4 different times and should have been respected that way. But Craig was able to change his motion 6 times. That shouldn't happen.
No. My motion was not changed until after I accepted essentially a substitute, a friendly amendment, I thought.
Well, I never heard anybody say friendly amendment. So can somebody tell us what the motion was that was just voted on?
The motion was.
Well, no, Craig. I would like one of the chair people to say what the motion is. They're
So,
running the meeting.
Yeah, so my understanding of the motion, and that's a good question, Valerie, is twofold. One is to, I want to say support the efforts of the rezoning with an eye toward focusing on affordable housing.
Affordable housing
Is that
was
right?
not part of it.
Craig, please.
Okay. First of all, Craig, I appreciate the clarification. Can you, Craig?
Yes.
Can you, Craig, sum up in 2 sentences what the resolution was that we just voted on?
Yes, simply, Community Board 8 supports efforts to rezone existing M14 and C84 zoning districts, and to make them residential or something. That was the gist of it, and that we support.
Hold it. Okay, let's not.
Yeah, we can hone in the precise wording, but that was the spirit of it. And just residential. I did not affordable. I did not want to be prescriptive.
Okay.
And that we
I
support,
understand.
Yeah, and that
I
we
understand.
support.
Valerie, Craig, just 1 second, please. Valerie, does that answer your? Your question?
I would just, I would kind of, does everybody who voted yes think that that's what they voted yes
But we're
to?
not relitigating this. The
Well,
vote
excuse
closed,
me,
Randy.
Craig, excuse me, I'm asking the chair a question. You're not the chair of this committee. You're not a co-chair of this committee. Please. I'm asking the co-chair a question because she seems to be a little bit confused about what the motion was that was voted on.
So, yes, as you know what, it is possible that individuals might have had different thoughts as to what the motion is, Valerie. But at the end of the day, people did vote on this, a yay or a nay. We're all intelligent people on this telephone call. So this is over, finished, done.
Okay, well, then I'm abstaining, and I just hope when we see the minutes and we're voting at a full board, that's fine, as long as that's what, now that we're all on the same page as to what was voted on, because well, I'm abstaining.
Understood.
Okay,
Kevin or Will, you're noting that?
Yep, yep, I wrote that down.
Barbara Rudder? Oh, sorry, Marco, what would you like to say?
Yeah, thank you. Very quick question, Will. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you just said 18 members that were present. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is the number that Kevin recorded.
18, but I counted those people that go against 9 minus Valerie, it will be 8. And since Valerie abstained, it will count it as a no. So
I'm not running this meeting. Please do not direct your vote counting to me. The co-chairs are responsible for counting their votes. I just procedurally called your names.
Yes,
so if,
yes. So, but my point
take
is
that up with the two co-chairs. Do not direct it towards me.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So
Will.
if the members are 18, and I just counted, we have 9 that we oppose. However, Valerie later she changed her vote for abstention. We are still counting as a no. So what we have right here is no position. That is, I think, is the case right here.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Marco. Will, so I know that the question was not directed to you, but you did say that the motion passed. I'm interested in knowing your reason why you thought that the motion passed in the first place.
How about this? Generally speaking,
I'm just asking them questions.
Generally speaking, I trust co-chairs to be writing down the names in real time as I am reading the names of people who vote. In full board and in committee meetings, I am not a secretary. I do not record the names of people who vote. I just unmute them, let them speak, try to hurry them along if they try to explain their vote, and then move forward. So I did say that there were 18. And I did not personally count them. I do not have the ability, as I'm clicking and using both hands, to unmute you all to do that.
Yeah.
So
no. You do a phenomenal
I said I
job,
believe there were 18, and I believed that passed. That was not
no
be
problem.
Gospel.
Okay, Will. Thank you for that.
I can go back to the videotape. I'm very happy to, if you guys give me a few minutes to go back to the videotape to count the votes for you.
Hold it, Will. Time out, please. Time out. First of all, thank you very much for everything that you do, because I know that you're keeping up with a multiple
Don't need to thank me.
I'm
paid.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank goodness for that. And probably not enough. But I just wanted to have some clarification as to why you thought that the motion passes. So now I have that understanding. And so Marco, thank you for raising that point, because it doesn't pass. You have 9 for, 9 against. I mean, it doesn't pass. It actually means that there's no position taken.
That's correct. That is
Excuse me,
correct.
I thought there were 8
so-
no votes. That became 7 no's and 1 abstention.
No, I counted. I'm sorry. I
Valerie
counted
was
it.
already a no, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was a
Valerie-
no. She was a
So
no.
so
Can
you are
we-
still
can we-
taking one of
Will-
the 8. Is that, am I incorrect? That's
No,
what's-
no, you're good. You're good. Well, let's not have this back and forth because that really is.
No, and
uh,
it's not back and forth.
No,
we are trying to
because
get the
you're
right answer.
absolutely- No, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, though, we have 9 votes. Either it's 8 with an abstention
No,
or
it-
9 with.
It's 7 with an
a no.
abstention or 8 total no. It
No,
was,
no.
according to Elizabeth Rose, and I can see her nodding her head, and Craig, the number was 8 of no's. And then if one of those 8 was Valerie Mason, which I believe it was, I remember calling her name.
Oh,
And so then she changed it from a no to an abstention.
oh, okay.
It still counts
So-
into the 8 the exact same way. So it
Oh,
still
I see.
passes
So
11
still
to
8.
7 to 1.
Okay, I
Well,
thought it was 9. I thought
Well,
it was
I think
nine.
Going
I
off of
counted
what other
9.
people are saying, if you give me a moment to go back to the video, I'm very happy to write down the names.
So
We can move
let's
the
go right
agenda.
now, call again. And for those people that we voted in no, and that's it. Very simple.
Yeah,
I'd
can
like to
everybody
propose,
just raise their hand?
I'd like to propose a second resolution.
What, you know what? Can we resolve this right now? Everybody who voted no, just raise your hand. Everybody, take down your hand. Oh, I'm trying to raise my hand. Okay, wait a minute, just 1 second. I'm trying to raise my hand. If you voted no, raise your hand. I only see 6.
Valerie Mason was one of those, and she's an abstention, so that's 7. It was
Okay. Who else voted no?
Gail Barron.
Okay, so that's the 8. That's it.
That is the 8.
Okay, that's it. Okay. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Okey doke. Michelle, you have a comment? Michelle, and then we'll go to the next item, which Sharon will take care of.
Yes, I'd like to make a resolution that we have a task force to discuss opportunities to create residential housing in our community.
Second.
So it's been seconded.
As an additional task force?
Well, task force was not mentioned in the first resolution.
That's correct.
So I'm making a resolution about us having a task force. The first resolution only talked about rezoning. This resolution says that we should have a task force to examine increasing residential housing in our community. And it was seconded.
Okay.
So I don't know if
Someone-
anybody,
Marco?
The question.
Second?
Michelle.
Yeah. Okay, call the question.
You do have 2 hands up, Elizabeth Rose and Craig Later, and procedurally, you previously let people speak.
Okay.
Certainly, yeah.
I think I'm unmuted. I think it's up to me. Am I called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Point of information. I believe Craig's resolution also included the formation of a task force to study and assess opportunities for the creation of residential zoning in currently manufacturing and commercial zoned locations. Is that correct?
I believe it. I believe he did, but is that correct?
Okay, so I am in favor of a task force. I simply want to flag that Michelle's statement that Craig's resolution did not call for a task force is not accurate. Craig's resolution that we voted on and which passed did two things. It called for the support of creating residential zoning out of currently commercial and manufacturing zones, and it called for the creation of a task force to study this issue. So I'm all in favor of Michelle's resolution as a supplementary support for creating a task force. I am simply, from a point of information perspective, clarifying that Craig's resolution included the call for a task force. Thank you.
I heard it that way too.
Yes, I'm unmuted. That is the case. The only thing that I may not have been clear about was when I was alluding to a task force or a subcommittee, I was specifying it in regards to this rezoning proposal, but I am certainly happy to expand it beyond that to looking at it from a district-wide perspective, if that's to be a separate resolution or a separate task force. Either way, I just want to make sure that I did allude specifically as the second part of the resolution to a subcommittee.
Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, thank you. In your final iteration, but it's a moot point because if we can consider this as a separate resolution, I'm fine. But in your final iteration, you did not mention the task force. You did along the way, but when Elizabeth said sum it up in a couple of lines, you did not mention the task force. And when we voted on it, the task force wording was not in it. Yeah. However, it doesn't matter because your resolution passed and I'm making this resolution, which is specifically about a task force. And if we can vote on that and that passes, wonderful, all bases covered. But I think we need to bring this to a conclusion.
If you go back to the video, you will see that I clearly stated it. And when I was asked to repeat it in a concise way, I never had the chance to finish and add that second piece. So
can I just
apologize if there was any confusion, but it was always intended to be there from the second that I believe it was, forget who it was who made the suggestion initially, that that be the second part of it, and it would, and in essence, be a friendly amendment.
I think
I'm just gonna, if I can just break in. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but a task force is an internal board matter. It doesn't require a resolution to create a task force, and in fact, a resolution, in and of itself, I think, wouldn't necessarily create a task force. So, the decision of whether to create a task force or not is one that, I'm happy to look at and discuss with folks offline. And it sounds like from this meeting, there's a lot of interest in doing it. So it's something that I'm open to, but I think it's basically a chair decision. So it's not a resolution question. So irrespective of whether it was in the resolution or not, I don't think we need a second resolution on it. And it's something that ultimately I'll decide. So again, happy to, I'll go back and look at the discussion of the meeting that we have recorded and talk to the folks who would like one. And, we'll take it from there.
I think when you're doing that, Russell, I would change my mind a little bit, but I would ask people who want to serve on the task force, because people may have voted against the resolution because they would have voted for a task force, but did not want to vote for the more specific and supportive language in the resolution.
Okay, I mean, we're not gonna, if there's a task force, we're not gonna, I don't know tonight, sitting here, who is gonna be on it or not, or any of that stuff. That's something we'll sort of figure out.
Yeah, I think that's
forward.
at the discretion of the chair overall, and that is a good point.
And I didn't mean to sort of, the purpose also of mentioning this is to sort of put the discussion to rest, not to sort of create a whole new discussion about. I mean, I think it's something that, we can potentially do, but it's not, again, it's not a resolution question.
Okay. So just so you know, we don't want any discussion put to rest.
Okay.
We just want to go on and on. Okay. Should we move forward on the next item on the agenda? All right, we will. Number 3. Kevin, if you don't mind, I'm calling on you at the last minute, but I know you can do this. Thank you so much. I want to, this is agenda item number 3, and it's about some complaints that we have received from Community Board 8 residents concerning a billboard on York Avenue between 61st and 62nd. And thank you very much, Kevin, for showing those photos. And if I may call on Judy Snyder, if you don't mind unmuting her, Will?
Thank you, Sharon. I'm
Yeah.
unmuted.
Okay.
Just to give everybody a summary, the East 60s Neighborhood Association, which has 45 apartment buildings, has a meeting every year for the owners and the presidents to come together, and Barry tells them what's going on in the community, and they ask questions and bring up issues. And frankly, I myself, when we had this meeting about 10 days ago, was not aware of this billboard. And as you can see, it's rather large. And as it turns out, this one block in the East 60s, I believe, is R8, and the billboard is allowed. At first, we thought it belonged to the Animal Medical Center. We then found out it belonged to the Bentley Hotel. It's on their property. If you want, I can read you the paragraph we wrote after we had our board meeting and we discussed this billboard. I can read you what the board had to say.
Yes, please.
As you know, the purpose of the East 60s Neighborhood Association is to promote a better community of residents, merchants, and institutions within our boundaries. At times, an issue can arise which requires balancing the interest of all those community members, which is the issue before us currently. In an effort to generate needed revenue from migrants occupying the Bentley Hotel that the city does not provide, has constructed an extremely large billboard on its property at York and 61st Street. And Memorial Sloan Kettering has contracted to be the first advertiser on that billboard, both worthy endeavors. However, a billboard of that size is simply wrong for a residential neighborhood. I am sure we all can appreciate how disturbing it is to residents who live in the York Avenue 60s area, especially as it has lighting during dark hours. A lit billboard shining through their windows is not only obtrusive, but unhealthy as it interferes with their sleep. I think we have to understand that while it is legal for the billboard to be at that location, there is an important moral issue to consider. Our large institutions have to be considerate of the adverse, albeit unintentional impact that their actions can have on individual residents of the community that they exist to serve. People should not be subjected to disruptive and overwhelming intrusions in their lives. Therefore, we respectively request that the Bentley Hotel, in its effort to continue to be a good neighbor that it has always been, remove the lighted billboard from their property for the benefit of the community. Since that was from our board meeting earlier this week, last week rather, since we had our board meeting, we've spoken with the Bentley Hotel and we spoke with their asset manager, Albert, and they've agreed to, quote, put eye shades on the lights. I said, what are eye shades? And that's a covering to cast the light downward so it won't shine in the window of the apartments, which I think is a very big improvement. However, he does tell me that they've paid for this billboard for 5 years. And he's willing to give free advertising to other nonprofits in the area, like maybe the Doe Fund or people like that. But that doesn't solve the problem of the big intrusive billboard, which doesn't belong in a residential area. So I don't know what we can do about it, but that's the situation.
And Judy, just to clarify, the Bentley Hotel given permission to do that. How can you tell me what the relationship
I believe
to the billboard to the occupants of the hotel?
No. The billboard they have the right to do it because it's an R8 district. It's the only one here in the 60s, as I understand it. And the Glick site was R8, but he got it changed and then went broke and we got apartment houses instead. So that left this one block to be R8, which allowed them to put that up. And it would bring in funds to them. And they tell me some of those funds would be used to help the migrants that are now housed in the hotel. If people don't know it, the hotel is not open to the public any longer.
Right.
The city has put the migrants there and it's filled with about 230 rooms are filled with migrants.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Can you unmute Michelle?
Thank you. So I'd like to make a resolution whose whereases would include Judy's factual commentary. And the resolution would be for this committee and this board to inquire as to the zoning remedies that we could explore in order to change the as of right use of a billboard of that size and scope and that site. It's part of the zoning that's permitting it. And I think the DOB has something to say about it. But I would like to explore, because they're going to continue to use this. This is a moneymaker. So I would like to explore how we change the situation on that block so that a sign of this size is no longer permitted. I don't know if Marco is raising his hand to speak or is it second?
Let me just say, one of the pictures, you couldn't see it. They put up 3 pictures of the billboard. The 4th picture was the permit from the Department of Buildings allowing this to be installed.
Yeah, but it's in keeping, it's the DOB, but also the zoning has to permit this. So
well, it does, and it does.
So I'm saying we can't vote it down without exploring zoning and rules and regulations that would no longer permit it, since we can anticipate that this is going to happen way into the future. If this is a big moneymaker for this entity, whether it be a hotel or anything else, we don't know what it will revert back to or become. It's going to be a viable thing for them as a resource, but it has tremendous visual blight in the community. The lighting is terrible. The size is out of scale for signage. And I'm just saying that we should explore the possibilities of changing whatever the zoning or rules or regulations are on that block, so that if we are successful, this will no longer be permitted. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. Did I see Elizabeth Rose's hand up at one time, and also Marco? Marco, okay, so are you raising your hand to speak, or?
Yes, no,
Okay.
I was just second.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. I just second to explore this possibility. That's the only
Okay.
thing I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Sherry?
This location is going to be grandfathered no matter what you do going forward. They're not going to be covered by any regulation. So I think we're in trouble. I think we're stuck with it. That's, well, we could maybe do it, make sure we don't have any others going up, but I think we're stuck with this one.
Okay, Judy, you initially brought this to the board. What do you want to see happen?
Well, when I spoke to the fellow from the hotel today, I did speak to him about, doing any further. I don't know what else he could put up there at the hotel, but that he has to keep in mind that this is a residential area. The hotel has been a member of our association almost since its inception, and he was very accommodating. He was, I think, somewhat surprised that the community was taken aback by this whole thing and that it wasn't a good thing. Frankly, I don't know what we could do if we change the R8 zoning. That was my question to Barry, just as Sherry was asking it. Would it be grandfathered? So I don't know what the answer is to this, but I said to him, I hope in 5 years you will not continue this project when the lease is up. And I didn't get a reply, but I didn't get a yes, I didn't get a no.
Okay. Anyone else? Marco, I'm sorry. Can you unmute Marco?
Just quick, I would like to clarify something. If the announcement is vacant for more than 2 years, and if the zoning resolution doesn't allow, so they lose the status of grandfather. That's and only that situation they lose the grandfather. If for 2 years consecutively do no use as an advertising, they lose that. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I don't think that they're. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, Sharon.
okay. I can't hear you guys. Anyway, thank you. So here's what my recommendation is. First of all, I'd like for the community board to support the E60s Neighborhood Association efforts
one, also document as well that the Bentley, and thank the Bentley for taking the extra step for shading the lights, which I think is very critical. And I think we'll have to have additional discussions to see how we can, to see if there's some way that we might be able to prevent this in the future. But at the very least, we need to support ESNA and document the steps that the Bentley has agreed to do, and to thank them for it.
I think that we could approach the hotel by saying we're very grateful that they've taken the original steps, and that we hope that they will consider pursuing further steps to better accommodate the community. I mean, butter them up a little bit before you ask them to do more.
I apologize. I've had some trouble with my audio. Leah Hanlon, and then Michelle Birnbaum.
Hi, I'm just a little perplexed. If the Bentley has had the right to do this for years and years, why are they suddenly just doing it now? And are they really, I don't know if it matters that they're doing it to help the migrants, but are they really doing this to get money in some amount to the migrants? Something just doesn't seem to add up here. So shouldn't you all be trying to find out what the real situation is?
Those are really good questions, Leah. At the end of the day, this signage is legal. You know, now it's legal, but I think we can all agree it's not appropriate for a residential community. And you know, what I can see at this point is acting on some mitigating measures, like adding the shading. You know, maybe in addition to adding the shading, reducing the wattage of the bulb. You know, I'm not sure about that, but it's all about mitigating measures now, because it as it appears, the sign is legal.
But you say as it appears, are we really sure that it is?
Yes, we are sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Judy. Michelle, and then Elizabeth. Thank you, Leah. Michelle, you need to be unmuted.
Call the question on my resolution. If you want me to repeat the scope of it, I'll be happy to.
Would you please?
Pardon me, Sharon?
I said, would you please?
Oh, yeah, sure. It basically was calling for our exploration as to what we could do to mitigate this, either by, you know, reaching out to zoning, the Department of Buildings. This is not to say that's going to be a solution. My resolution is to explore that. It can also be to explore the mitigating circumstances with the owner of the Bentley. But basically, it's what we are all talking about. But in the resolution, I would use the whereases as the facts were outlined in Judy's description. But that just gives us the right to explore how we can do something about this. Maybe we can, maybe we can't.
Yeah, just as a sort of procedural point, I mean, ordinarily a resolution is something that's going to go to some governmental agency that expresses our view. If this is just a sort of internal thing of we're deciding that we want to do something, I mean, why don't we just, I would say maybe it's like yeah, I mean, it's a letter or something to that effect. I saw Valerie's hand motion there. So yeah, I mean,
I don't have an objection to that, Russell, but a resolution like this could go to the DOB and to city planning.
but if what you're proposing is that we look into things that we can do.
Well, I meant when I said that we can do, I didn't mean we physically here on the Upper East Side. I meant who we can petition. Maybe we could petition the DOB, we can petition city planning, you know, we can explore a change in that zoning. Because if this is if this is a blight, it will continue to be a blight. When MSK stops renting it, somebody else will rent it. And the size of the billboard is very, very large. But, you know, I don't know that anything precludes them from dividing it up and having many advertisers on those billboards. If one advertiser doesn't have deep pockets enough to rent that whole, you know, all that footage, then they can rent it to 2 people, to 4 people. If we're trying to eliminate the visual blight in this neighborhood going forward, then we have to see if we can try to change the zoning, change the, you know, whatever it is, that's what we need to explore. So that's what my resolution is for. And we can send it, city agencies, I think it's perfectly appropriate to send it to city planning and to who did I say? City, oh, the DOB.
But what are we,
Yeah, what would be, I'm sorry,
Russell. What are we expressing to them? I mean, what are we telling them we want?
We're expressing to them that the neighborhood has displeasure with the size of this bill, the size and lighting of this billboard, that it is an outlier in our community and that it doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood. And that's because of changes in zoning or changes in the makeup of that street, it has become viable as of right, and we're looking to change that. So I think that's appropriate in the resolution.
Right. So just because I'm unmuted, I will say that I personally would vote, I will vote against that resolution. The reason being, it's a legal billboard, and I don't think we should ask DOB to do something about something that's legal that they don't really have a basis to do. I think what would be more constructive is, I guess, continued dialogue with the billboard owner to try and sort of mitigate some of the specific issues that we have. But I think the resolution, as you've articulated it, Michelle, I agree is an appropriate one, but I personally am going to vote against it.
And Russell, I think I agree with you. I think continued dialogue with the hotel and the community board participating in that dialogue might get us further, since it is legal. And as Marco has said, that the Bentley isn't going to be vacant for 2 years, which would make it illegal for them to have the bulletin board. So I think passing the resolution is not going to help us any. I think talking to the owners of the hotel or the people representing the hotel is more important.
If I just may say, this resolution does not preclude that, but the mitigation that they can offer and that they would offer, since this is a cash cow for them, is not going to be mitigation that you're going to be happy with. And I think people ask for changes in zoning and everything else all the time. We can just be on the record that because that billboard and that street is an outlier, that we would like to see something done about it. That in no way precludes
Michelle,
talking
I
to
do apologize.
the hotel.
Michelle,
sorry.
I just need to interject 2 questions. The first is, has there been a second on Michelle's
Yes,
resolution?
Marco seconded it.
Oh, Marco seconded. Okay, so Elizabeth, if we can unmute Elizabeth, and then we're going to vote on the resolution. I plan to vote against it as well.
Thank you, Sharon. It strikes me, first of all, I want to just applaud Judy and the 60s Neighborhood Association for the way that they have pursued this thus far. And it does sound like you are seeing some openness from the property owner to address the neighborhood's concerns. And that's really incredibly valuable and important. And we should support and applaud those efforts. From a sort of, what does this most closely resemble of very recent experience? This is a case at its heart of an as of right use of a piece of property that nevertheless has negative impact on its neighbors. And that is effectively the exact same situation that we are looking at with the church development and its neighbor on, and I'm going to get the exact address incorrect, in the East 90s, where the board proposed and passed a resolution urging both sides to negotiate, to develop a resolution. And so I'm going to echo, I think, what Russell was suggesting and what Judy seems to be asking for, which is we support bringing the parties together to hopefully identify appropriate actions or strategies to address the community concerns and minimize the impact on the residential neighborhood. But this genuinely is effectively an as of right use that we may not love, and there are a lot of as of right uses that people don't love, and its impact on the local community, and how can we bring people together to try to mitigate and reduce the impact. And so, Judy, I really support everything that you have been doing and what you seem to be asking for. I would offer a substitute motion to call upon the owners of the Bentley Hotel to continue meeting with the 60s Neighborhood Association and include Community Board 8 in the loop for discussions of how can they address the community concerns about the impact of this billboard on livability for the local residents.
I would second that motion, Elizabeth.
Okay.
But I would also add to it, if you wouldn't mind, appreciation of the steps they've taken, because I think people are more apt to go ahead if you've told them you've done a great job and let's do a little more of it.
I completely agree and accept that suggestion, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Rita, do us all a favor. Call a question. Okay.
Second that.
Call the question.
Everyone who is against this, please raise your hand. No, this is a substitute motion, Russell.
I'm abstaining.
Oh, okay. Barbara Rutter for the substitute motion.
Abstain.
Okay. Lindsay?
Get a little bit closer.
Yeah. Also abstain.
Craig,
Abstain.
Kevin. Are you keeping track, Kevin?
Keeping track of what number?
Of the votes.
No, I apologize.
Okay, no worries. It probably is not you at all. All right, so it looks like we have,
I believe that was 4 abstentions according to Elizabeth Rose. And really quickly, just while we have a pause, the members who are currently still in attendance: Judy Schneider, Elizabeth Ashby, Sharon Pope Marshall, Russell Squire, Adam Wald, Barbara Rudder, Craig Lader, Elizabeth Rose, Gail Barron, Juno, Lindsay, Marco, Michelle, Peggy, Rita, Sherry Weiner, Valerie Mason. Are there any that I didn't name? No.
and we had 4 abstentions.
Yes.
Okay. So the motion passes. Elizabeth, do you want to do old business?
Is there any old business? Michelle?
It wasn't old business. I had raised my hand for motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll take it.
Good
I
night.
think that's a popular one.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.